What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down, take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching storyline and combine them together into one big video. Now, with that being said, today's full story video is going to be about the Squadron Supreme and the pre-war years. Now, remember, guys, when it comes to the Squadron Supreme, they are technically a set of characters that were made by Marvel Comics as a way to have characters represent the heroes of DC Comics and Marvel Comics. So, for example, Hyperion is Superman, Nighthawk is Batman, and of course Blur is Flash, and the list goes on and on and on. Now in the year 2001, I want to say, Marvel gave us the Supreme Power Universe. Now this was another universe in Marvel's multiverse that held another version of the Squadron Supreme. And you did have a set of different writers come in to tell the stories of this version of the Squadron Supreme. Now, with that being said, though, today's full story video is going to cover the pre-war years. And the reason why, because in these stories, we were told a war is going to come to this universe Earth. And when the war comes, the main bad guy is going to be Hyperion, who is supposed to be the Superman of this universe. And so these stories right here are technically leading us into the actual war to come down the road. So guys, I do hope you enjoyed today's comic book video. Now, when it comes to today's video, we are going to cover Supreme Power Hyperion. Now, when it comes to Supreme Power Hyperion, it's all about Hyperion, but after the original run of Supreme Power. Because at the end of Supreme Power, you had Hyperion tell the American government and America's military that he is no longer going to help out America at all. And the reason why, because we have to remember, when it comes to Hyperion, he had a similar origin to Superman, where he crashed on Earth. The only difference was that instead of being taken in by some random couple who would then raise him as their son, he was taken in by the military. Now, the military had lied to him and said, "You are an American boy, you are human, and we are here to help you get better and learn control over your powers." Now, Hyperion found out that that was actually a lie. He learned that he was an alien, that the military lied about his origin to him so that they could use him for different military missions. Now, after that, Hyperion did step away from helping out the American military, but then it felt like they had the right to pull him back in. They wanted to control him again and use him again on different military missions. But unfortunately, he did not want to rejoin their forces. And so what the military did was they went to the public and told the public, "Oh, by the way, your hero Hyperion, yeah, he's an alien." And with him being an alien, of course, the public began to be scared of him. And so Hyperion just left America. And he said, "I am no longer going to help out America at all. I don't care what's happening over there. Because what you guys did to me, you now lost your number one hero." And so this is Hyperion wanting to be left alone. But unfortunately, when it comes to the military, they don't care. They want him back. And so this is the story of them trying to get him back, but it actually leads into them going into an alternate reality. But then we actually pick up with General Alexander. Now, this is General Alexander right now, putting together a team of characters to go after Hyperion, because he's the one who believes that Hyperion should be working for the military, but he's also the one who told the public about the idea that Hyperion is not from Earth, that he is an alien, to hurt Hyperion emotionally. Now, with that being said, he's putting together a team of characters to go after Hyperion, to bring him back here. And the first character he does recruit is Emil Burbank. Now, I feel like personally, Emil Burbank is actually the Lex Luthor of this universe in some kind of way. But when it comes to Emil, he's actually different than other characters in Supreme Power who claims they have powers. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to the characters who have powers, their powers came from a virus that was on Hyperion's ship. Now, not every character who has powers got their powers from that virus, but most of them did, because when he crashed, we came to find out that he had some kind of airborne virus in his ship that was spread across the world that gave different people powers. Now, when it came to Emil, his power is not an active power. His power is his brain, meaning that it made him super smart. So smart, he was able to accomplish so many things in life, but at a very young age. Now, with all that being said, though, when it comes to Emil, he had killed off his mother, his father. He sent his sister to a psych ward. Like, he did a lot of dark things to remove his family, but as a way to show how smart he is. But on top of that, to get all their money to himself. But this is him saying, hey, Alexander, I am going to join your super team to go after Hyperion and to hopefully bring him back here. Now, you do have the general say, you're in, but I want you to meet the rest of your team. Now, the next character we are actually going to meet is Raw Lee Lund. Now, Raw Lee Lund's code name is going to be Shape, but he's going to be on the team along with Emil to go after Hyperion. Now, when it comes to Shape, he had a very hard upbringing to the point where he's not very intelligent. But what makes him very useful for this team is that he's very durable. Matter of fact, he's kind of like this universe version of the Blob, where he's actually able to take almost anything without actually getting hurt, which means that he could take a hit from Hyperion and most likely not get hurt, which honestly makes him a more interesting character. Now, at first, Emil looks at his teammate like, but yeah, he's not intelligent. He's very kind of slow there. But you didn't have the general say, yes, he may not be intelligent, but he's very durable, which could help you slow down Hyperion when it comes to Hyperion and his super strength. Now, the next character we get introduced to is Arcania. Now, when it comes to Arcania, she does have quantum reality warping abilities. Now, I'm going to try my best to kind of explain who this character actually is, like what her powers is. So like, she's able to warp reality around her, which is honestly pretty cool for this universe. So for example, if she wants to walk on water, she can do that. Now, she can also kind of pull objects out from parallel dimensions from this earth. So for example, if she wants to pull an apple from another dimension that is parallel to this one right here, she can do that very easily. Now, when I say easily, I mean smaller objects. But the reason why she's joining this team is to find a power source for her powers, which right now, everyone believes it was the virus from Hyperion's ship. But at the same time, she believes Hyperion could be the power source to her powers. And she wants to kill him or get rid of him so that she may get rid of her powers. Either way, she does join the team, and this makes the team even stronger and give them a better chance to actually take down Hyperion. But then the next character we are actually introduced to is Albert Gaines, aka Nuke. Now, Nuke has the ability to actually emit radiation non-stop. And the reason why I say non-stop, because he does not have the ability to actually control it, to actually stop it. And so nonstop, his body's just always emitting radiation in the air. Now, he's also able to sense radiation from different parts of the world as well, which again makes him a very strong opponent. And so he's also going to join the team, and they're going to give him a special armor as a way to protect people around him when he is always emitting radiation nonstop. But this is going to be the team that's going to go after Hyperion and to hopefully bring him back into the military fold. And so getting into the second chapter, we actually do pick up with this new super team going to where Hyperion is actually at. And at first, they're trying to convince Hyperion to rejoin the military, to come back to work for the military. Now, of course, you have Hyperion say no. And so that is the moment you have Emil actually walk over and try to talk to Hyperion, try to convince him to actually rejoin the military. Now, this is why I say Emil is just Lex Luthor for Hyperion, because yes, you do have Emil trying to convince Hyperion to actually rejoin the military, but at the same time, it's also Emil being very cocky, because he knows that when it comes to the rest of the team, their powers combined together could easily help them stop Hyperion. And so if Hyperion actually tries to attack Emil, well then the rest of the characters will be able to actually stop Hyperion. And so yes, you do have Emil say, hey man, you should go ahead and rejoin the military. But at the same time, he's like, yeah, but if you try to attack me, my team here can easily stop you. Now, you do have Hyperion take the words of what Emil says as a threat. And the reason why, because remember, when it came to Hyperion, he said he wanted to be left alone. He did not want to be bothered anymore by anything or anyone from America. But here we are now, a new super team that was put together by Alexander coming here to say, you should rejoin the military. Now, the reason why Alexander is doing this, the new general, because he's afraid that Hyperion could come back down the road and just wreck America. And nobody in America could possibly stop him if he actually goes on a rampage. And so again, it's Alexander trying to control him. But because America once again did not follow what Hyperion wanted, which was to be left alone and he'll leave America alone, and you have Emil being this cocky jerk right now, you have Hyperion say, yeah, you know what? I don't like you guys. And so it does lead into a battle between Hyperion and this super team. And they are able to show us that when it comes to the other characters' powers on his team, they actually give Hyperion a challenge. They actually make this battle really hard for him, to the point where he does lose the battle, but is Hyperion not trying to give up? He's trying to continue to fight against the forces that were put together to bring him back to the military. But then this is going to lead into a very big problem. And what I mean is that when it comes to Hyperion, Nuke, and also Arcania using their powers at the exact same time, something happens, something shifts. And what I mean by that is when they use their powers at the same time all together, it goes complete dark. Now, this darkness only happens for a brief moment, but when the characters that were put together to become this super team to bring Hyperion back in, when they wake up, Hyperion is gone. And so you had a team say, okay, you know what? He got away and we have no idea how to track him. So let's go ahead and go back to base. Now, Emil realized that something is wrong with Arcania. And the reason why, because she's highly drained, because she did use a lot of her powers in that big battle against Hyperion. But on top of that, she feels like something is off. Something is wrong, which honestly, she's right. Because when you have the team travel back to America to kind of hopefully regroup and find a way to find Hyperion now, When they do get back to a major city, and honestly, I don't know what city this is, they see a huge crater in the ground. Now, when they actually go into the city, they kind of feel like it has to be some kind of terrorist attack. While they were away fighting against Hyperion, something must have happened where bombs blew up or something, some kind of terrorist attack attacked this city that they are in at the moment. Now, here's the problem though. When they go down into the city, they realize that the public is actually scared of them. And they're wondering why in the world is the public so scared of them? Now, you then have Arcania look up in the sky. And when she does, she sees Hyperion, but he looks different. But on top of that, he's surrounded by a bunch of characters. Now, some of these characters we have actually seen, but some of these other characters we have not seen yet in this universe. And so that tells Arcania something is off. Something is wrong. And on top of that, why does it look like they have formed some kind of team? And of course, right now to us as the readers, we're like, oh, they made the Squadron Supreme team. But the problem is though, how is that possible? Because before their battle with Arcania, our super team here, there was no Squadron Supreme team. And so right now to Arcania and the rest of her group, they feel like, okay, we must be in some kind of alternate universe. And you do have an old man tell her, yeah, by the way, there were big battles across America in all the major cities. So like San Diego, Chicago, so on and so on. And you always had these different groups of heroes try to fight against this Squadron Supreme team, but they would always lose. And so when it came to this city, yeah, it happened again. You had some heroes try to stop the Squadron Supreme, but they couldn't do it at all. Now, he does point to one character who's left who was fighting against the Squadron Supreme team, but he barely made it out. And that is Nighthawk. And so right now, you have our hero say, okay, let's talk to Nighthawk and figure out if it's true that we are in some kind of alternate universe. And so getting into the third chapter, we actually do pick up with confirmation that right now our heroes are in an alternate universe. Now, for Arcania, she doesn't call it a alternate universe. She calls it a quantum possibility. And what she means by that is, okay, let me explain. So let's say you, a regular person who's just living your regular life, but there's always a possibility that something could happen to you that could change your life, like winning millions of dollars or winning a brand new car. But again, those are things that could possibly happen to you. But let's say in an alternate universe, and let's say up to a certain point, everything is going the same as it was in your regular universe, except one of those possibilities actually happens in that other universe. So let's say in that other universe, up to a certain point, everything is going the same way as it was in the regular universe, except in the new one, you did win $1 million. And so now the timeline is different. Or let's say you did win a car. And so that timeline is different from the original timeline. And so that is a quantum possibility. And so right now it's Arcania saying something must have happened in this alternate Earth or this alternate quantum possibility, meaning that something had changed to lead to a world that is so dark. And the question is though, what happened to lead to this quantum possibility so that when our heroes go back to their timeline, to their world, their universe, they can try to prevent that from actually happening. Now, you do have Nighthawk kind of explain what happened that led to a darker world, a darker future. And what he says is that two things happened that led to this darker world: the American military and Hyperion. But you couldn't have the second without the first, meaning that thanks to the American military, the American government, the American system, because they tried to control Hyperion in so many different kinds of ways, it changed the man. And so after he had left America alone for a certain amount of years, he came back here. And when he did come back here, that began the downfall for America. That began the downfall for Hyperion. Because again, the American government, the American military, the American system, they kept trying to control Hyperion. Even when he asked to be left alone, he was brought back into the system. But because they kept trying over and over again, something had changed in him. And so it led to Nighthawk saying, you know what? I cannot trust Hyperion. Now, when it comes to Nighthawk, he never did trust Hyperion. And the reason why, because to Nighthawk, really, almost anybody who's not black, they can't be trusted. But either way, you have Nighthawk say, I couldn't trust Hyperion, and I needed to know what he was actually plotting to do. And so Nighthawk asked Blur to kind of keep eyes on Hyperion. Now remember, Blur is just a Flash in this universe. But either way, it's Nighthawk asking Blur, keep a close eye on Hyperion. I can't do that. You can. And on top of that, he trusts you more than he actually trusts me. So I'm hoping you'll be able to gather some kind of intel to tell me what's going on with Hyperion. Now, when it comes to Blur, he honestly doesn't want to betray his friend Hyperion. Now, remember, if this is a quantum possibility, that means a lot of events that happen in this timeline also happen in the regular timeline that we have followed in Supreme Power, which means that in this universe as well, Hyperion and Blur were close friends. Because remember, in Supreme Power, when Hyperion heard about Blur, someone else out in the world with abilities, Hyperion was happy to finally find someone that he could communicate with. And so in this universe, it's the same way. Hyperion came first, then came Blur. They became best friends. And so even though you have Nighthawk asking Blur to kind of keep eyes on Hyperion, is Blur kind of feeling bad on the idea of actually following Hyperion around. He feels like he is portraying a close friend of his. But you do have Blur actually agree with Nighthawk to keep some eyes on Hyperion. Now, you do have Nighthawk tell our heroes, but also tell us, the readers, that after he had asked Blur to keep eyes on Hyperion, that was 2 years ago. But he said after he had asked Blur to keep eyes on Hyperion, he no longer heard back from Blur. And that was at first okay, because that first year he could still see Blur in the battlefield. Even though the two characters were no longer talking, he knew that Blur was okay. It was the second year he got worried. And the reason why, because he no longer saw Blur at all with the rest of the Squadron Supreme, which told Nighthawk, oh my God, Hyperion did something to Blur, but the question is though, what? And we come to find out, thanks to the story, one day Blur saw Hyperion and Blue Eagle leaving. Now, Blue Eagle is a new character for this story and the ones down the road, but either way, because this alternate universe has more heroes, Blue Eagle is one of them. Now, you have Hyperion and Blue Eagle going to the mountains because it's Hyperion wanting to show Blue Eagle something special in the cave he has in the mountains. Now, Blur felt like something was up, and so Blur had actually followed Hyperion and Blue Eagle to this cave that they actually went to. Now, once Blur is able to catch up, he comes to find out what Hyperion did to Blue Eagle. Because while you have Blur still outside the cave, Hyperion had actually knocked out Blue Eagle and then hooked him up to some kind of device. And so when Blur finally catches up and goes inside the cave, he sees what Hyperion has done to Blue Eagle. And we come to find out that what Hyperion had actually built is some kind of machine that can break somebody's will. And that right there is very important, because now you are talking about the idea that Hyperion has some kind of machine that he can use as a way to control people and make those people actually do what he wants them to do, to respect him even more than they already did. And so now Blue Eagle is kind of like fully controlled by Hyperion. And Blur saw the whole thing went down. Now, after the process was actually done, after that whole process was done where you have Hyperion break the willpower of Blue Eagle, you didn't have Hyperion hear Blur's breathing. And so he's kind of like, oh, someone else is in the cave that should not be here right now, and that is Blur. And so you have Hyperion begin to chase down Blur. And the reason why, because Blur cannot tell the rest of the Squadron Supreme what Hyperion is trying to do, or he cannot warn the public or the military what Hyperion is trying to do. And so Blur tried to give away. But the end of the 3rd chapter, we are left to believe that Hyperion was able to capture Blur, and we're left to believe that maybe he killed off Blur to keep his secret, that he has some kind of machine that can break people's willpower. And so getting into the 4th chapter, we actually do see Nighthawk kind of wrapping up his story about what happened to Blur. But right as soon as he does that, he gets an alert. And this alert is actually telling him, hey, you have trouble coming your way. Because what Nighthawk did was he placed sensors outside a place that him and our heroes are hiding in. And so with that being said, those sensors went off, which means that the heroes who are working with Hyperion, they found the place that Nighthawk and our heroes are hiding in. And so they are about to get attacked. Matter of fact, they do get attacked. Now, you would think that with this battle going on, Hyperion would actually step in and try to end the battle, but he doesn't do that. And you would think that the alternate Hyperion would step in, but he doesn't. Instead, what this alternate Hyperion does, he tells his team, stop, fall back, leave them alone. Matter of fact, they are not even a threat at all. And so you have Hyperion fly away. Now, when he does fly away, Zarda knows what's happening to this alternate Hyperion, because she says he knows what he has to do. He did not know it would be today. And so right now, it's Zarda kind of telling us Hyperion knows something else that we don't know yet, and not even our heroes know about yet either. But we are about to learn here in this chapter and the next one. Now, we come to find out that the alternate Hyperion actually left to go find our Hyperion, the Supreme Power Hyperion, which would make sense because when our other heroes have been teleported to this alternate Earth, that would make sense that Hyperion would be here as well, because he was there when the darkness surrounded them, and when that darkness went away, he disappeared, but at the same time, he was still teleported to this alternate Earth as well. Now, you do have the alternate Hyperion tell our Hyperion that he knows what he's thinking right now. Because we have to remember, this is a quantum possibility, which means that when it comes to the Supreme Power universe and this universe, the timelines are exactly the same up to a certain point. Something possibly happened that changed the future of this timeline. And so it's alternate Hyperion saying, I know what you're thinking. You had left America. You asked them to leave you alone, to stop bothering you, but they couldn't do that. And now you're kind of wondering, what is your next step? Well, let me tell you what your next step is. Your next step is actually to take control. And that right there is very huge, because what you have this alternate Hyperion say is that he realized that after he told America to leave him alone, they couldn't. They just kept bothering him over and over again. And so he came back. And when he came back, he realized he has the power to control the entire world. And that's what he did, because he realized if you leave the humans to do their own problems, to control their own problems, they can't do it. There's so many wars left and right. People are starving left and right. People are dying left and right because of the different problems that the humans have, and we cannot leave them on their own to fix their problems. It's up to you and I to actually take control of the world to make the world better. Now, you didn't have the alternate Hyperion tell our Hyperion, follow me, because I want to show you something very important. And so we come to find out that this alternate Hyperion took our Hyperion to the same cave we saw Blur go into earlier. Now, when they go into this cave, the cave had evolved, because remember, Blur went into this cave 2 years ago, which means that it gave this cave enough time to be changed in the 2 years since Blur was supposedly killed off by Hyperion. And we come to find out that when it comes to the cave, it evolved only because the spaceship that brought Hyperion made this cave evolve. It's kind of like his fortress of solitude, because what this Hyperion says to our Hyperion is that the spaceship that brought him to Earth is a living organism. It went around and began to grab different kinds of text to add it to its own. And once it did that, it began to evolve. It got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point it made this huge place for me, my fortress of solitude, my home, a way to control the earth. Now remember, this is a quantum possibility, which means that this timeline and our Supreme Power timeline should be very similar, except there was something that happened, a possibility which changed everything. But with this possibility, that means it could still actually happen in the Supreme Power universe. It's a maybe, but it could still technically happen. Now, when it comes to our Hyperion, he does not believe that this is going to happen to him in Supreme Power universe. But then you have this alternate Hyperion say, oh no, this could technically still happen. And the reason why? Because I pull out this piece of paper that has the same phrase of words that I knew you're going to say to me, which tells me this could still technically happen. So even though we are a quantum possibility timeline, it can still happen for you. We're technically a possible future to come to your Earth. And so I'm trying to tell you the best way to help this planet out is to take control. So follow my directions. And when you go back to your Earth, do what I did and you'll have all of this. And so, yes, this is a quantum possibility. It's a quantum possibility future for the Supreme Power universe. And so then we see the alternate Hyperion go deeper into the cave. Now, when he does, he is actually going to check up on a prisoner. And that prisoner is no other than Blur himself of this universe, which means that we were told wrong. Blur never died. Blur was just captured by Hyperion, which honestly makes sense. And the reason why I say that, because remember, this is a quantum possibility future. And what I mean by that is this timeline was exactly the same as the Supreme Power timeline, but something happened to create this possible future, which means that when it came to this Hyperion of this Earth, when he first began to look around for someone who was just like him, someone with powers, he found Blur first, and him and Blur became best friends. They became brothers, just like in the Supreme Power universe. And so when it came to this Hyperion, he realized he couldn't just kill off Blur, because if he did, he killed off the one person he had left in the world that he looked at as a friend, as a brother. But at the same time, he couldn't have Blur out there just running around telling everybody what Hyperion was actually up to. And so he had no choice but to lock up his friend, just in case his friend actually tried to ruin his plans. And so that what happened to this Blur of this universe. But you didn't have Blur tell us, the readers, but also this Hyperion, that this Hyperion did not tell our Hyperion what happened to Blur. And that right there is actually very important. And the reason why, because this Hyperion knows if he had told our Hyperion what happened to Blur in this possible future, then our Hyperion would not go down the same footsteps as this Hyperion. It would be a completely different future then. Something that this Hyperion does not want to happen. And so that is why he didn't tell our Hyperion, oh yeah, by the way, we end up capturing Blur and locking him away. No, if he had told our Hyperion that right there, it would have changed everything, because our Hyperion has the same timeline as this one. When he went out in the world, he began to look around and try to find people who were just like him. And the first person was Blur, which means that he had to make sure not to tell our Hyperion about Blur and anything else about Blur. And so when we get into the 5th chapter of this storyline, we actually do pick up with the alternate Hyperion once again. Now, this is where he realized that it's time for our heroes to go back home to their Earth. But the problem is, though, he knows that when it comes to our Hyperion, he's not going to go back so easily. And what he means by that is, when it comes to Arcania, Emil, Nuke, and Shape, they were originally sent to capture our Hyperion before they came over to this timeline. And so what the alternate Hyperion is trying to say is that when it comes to our Hyperion, he's not going to go back as their prisoner. But at the same time, though, when it comes to Arcania, Shape, Nuke, and Emil, they're not going to take just some random surrender. So that means we have to put them in some kind of situation where basically everybody wants to go home and they're forced to work together to actually go back home. And so that leads into a huge battle between our heroes and the heroes of this universe. But it's a way to kind of force our heroes to actually work together so that they have a way to go back home. Because remember, the reason why they got here was the combined powers of Nuke, Arcania, and Hyperion. And so if they want to go back, they have to use their powers together once again to go back to their point in time. And so you do have the heroes of this Earth begin to attack our heroes from the Supreme Power universe. And it does lead into a big battle. Now, before our heroes actually go back in time, we do learn one piece of information which could be very important, because as our heroes were fighting against the heroes of this universe, well, Dr. Spectrum of this universe began to freak out. And the reason why? Because he saw Nuke. Now remember, this alternate Earth is a possible future, 2 years in the future, which means that something happened between this point and the last point in our Earth where Nuke has supposedly been killed off by Dr. Spectrum. Because when he sees Nuke, he's like, oh my God, Nuke, you're alive? This is crazy. This is wild. But he has no idea that this is not his Nuke, that this is a Nuke from our Supreme Power universe. But he freaks out because Dr. Spectrum had killed Nuke in this possible future, which could still happen in the Supreme Power timeline. Either way, you didn't have Nuke, Arcania, and Hyperion use their powers all together to actually go back to their point in time. And so to kind of wrap up today's video, we actually pick up with a conversation that's going on between Arcania, Alexander, and also Emil. Now, this conversation is right now talking about the idea that could that quantum possibility future actually happen over here in the Supreme Power universe? Now, when it comes to Arcania, she tells Alexander, the general, no, I do not believe that that could happen over here because that was a quantum reality possibility, meaning that that was just an alternate universe where the timelines were very similar to one another, but then a possibility had changed that timeline over there. But the problem is, though, you have the general kind of concern because right now we kind of find out Mark Milton, aka Hyperion, is coming back to America. He agreed to work with the military. He agreed to work with the American government. And that's a problem because remember what Nighthawk said earlier about that universe over there, that alternate universe Nighthawk. He said what let us down the dark path we're on right now was when Hyperion came back to America. Because when he came back to America, he had a plan. And that plan was control the earth to make it better. And so he said it all began when he came back or when he agreed to come back to America. And right now in this universe is happening right now. Hyperion had agreed to come back to America because he has a plan to control the earth. He got that plan from his future self. But guys, when it comes to Arcania, she still doesn't believe that what they went through was actually real or it can happen over here because, again, that was a quantum reality possibility. And so when Arcania and also the general leave the room, you have Emil looking at a piece of paper. It has a date on there, 2 years in the future. And so to Emil, that wasn't no quantum reality possibility. That was the actual future of the Supreme Power universe, which means that if they're going to stop Hyperion or change his mind anytime soon, they have 2 years to actually do it. And so that means they're now on a countdown. They have to figure out how to change Hyperion's mind or to stop him before he takes over the earth. And so the opening pages of this book, we actually do get confirmation that when it comes to Nighthawk, if you're going to attack the black community, most likely you are going to die because he is going to find you and then most likely kill you. And so we actually do pick up with a Caucasian person. Now, when it comes to this Caucasian person, what he did was, well, he did not actually steal anything from the black community, but he also did not attack the black community. What he did was he went into a black neighborhood in Chicago and decided to spray paint on one of the walls in the black neighborhood the hard N-word. And so as soon as Nighthawk saw that, he's like, that is a way of you attacking the black community by basically spraying on the wall that word right there. And so Nighthawk paid him a visit. Now, like I said earlier, usually Nighthawk will kill you off, but instead he's like, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time because technically you did not hurt, like you didn't actually beat someone down. You didn't physically hurt someone, but you did emotionally hurt this neighborhood. And now they know what you did. I'm going to let them take care of it. And so you actually have Nighthawk lead this Caucasian character in the middle of a black neighborhood, but surrounded by a bunch of black people who now know, oh, so you're the one going around our neighborhood spraying the hard N-word on different walls in our neighborhood. Okay, and you're also ruining a lot of different things in our neighborhood as well. Cool, you know what? We are going to technically jump you. And so you do have this Caucasian character as Nighthawk for help. But Nighthawk's all like, no, you deserve this. You attacked the black community, not physically, but emotionally. And that's enough for me to let them go ahead and handle you. And honestly, whatever they do to you, I don't honestly care. And he walks away. And so then we jump over to a mental facility. Now, when we do, we actually kind of find out that when it comes to this mental facility, it does hold a lot of mental prisoners, prisoners who are not fit for a regular prison because of their mental state. And so they're kept here. Now, a lot of these prisoners right now are up for parole. And so right now you do have a committee who is kind of there to kind of say, yes, you are approved for parole, or no, you denied for parole. And so you do have some prisoners actually get approved for the chance of having parole. But then it comes down to the last one, Stephen Benz. Now, Stephen Benz is going to be the bad guy of this storyline. Now, with that being said, though, as soon as he walks into the room to get judged for parole, you have one board member of the committee say no right off the bat. Like, as soon as his name is said, this guy says no. This man right here does not deserve to be out there in the public ever again. Now, of course, you do have the officers take him away, but then you have one of the newest members of the committee as an old member. Why did you do that? Like, that guy did not even have a fair trial, a fair chance to explain why he should have parole. And that is the moment we learn the origin of Stephen Benz and why he was denied the chance of parole. And we kind of find out that he was actually a pharmacist before he became a prisoner. But what he would do was he would give people extra medicine, or he would pretend to give people extra medicine. So for example, if you were a family member, but only one person in that family in your house was covered by some kind of health insurance, then you only got enough pills for that one person. But then he'll give you extra pills, quotation marks, to help everybody in that household if everybody is sick. The problem was, though, the extra pills that he was putting in that bottle was actually something he made, which of course was something poisonous. And so, for example, this black family came in and they came for medicine, but of course, only one person was actually covered. And so he said, you know what? I feel bad about that. Here's some extra pills to cover everybody in the household, just in case everybody does get sick. Unfortunately, he put in poison pills. And so because that black mother gave each child and her own mother as well, those pills, they all died because the pills he put in there were actually poisonous. Now, the only reason why he got caught because one of his clerks actually saw him pour extra pills into the medicine bottle, but not knowing that the pills he poured in there were actually poisonous. But when word got out how the black family actually died, she told the FBI, hey, this man did it. He gave them some kind of poison pills that killed off the entire family. And so the FBI moved in, they found him, got him, but when they came to his house, they found something else in his basement. And so what they found in his basement was actually a lab where he was creating this poison pills. But the thing was, he had different trials for years going on because they found a notebook. And apparently he was working in this lab for at least 2 years. Now, at first, it was said in his journal that he was testing on, rats and everything. But then he got bigger and bigger. Then he had animals like dogs and cats, and then it came humans. And so when it came to humans, it was kind of like, okay, now I know how my pills actually work. And so he would do this for years, give people, different kinds of people, these pills to kind of see what would actually happen to them. Would they die? Would they actually recover? And he made sure there was no kind of antidote. But when it came to the FBI going into that lab, they also found out that he had created so many different kinds of pills, he could literally take out half of Chicago. That's how crazy this guy was. Now, of course, when it came to his trial, he did plead not guilty. But of course, they're like, dude, listen, we have all this evidence on you. There's no way you're not guilty. And so he gets thrown in jail. But as soon as he does get thrown in jail, he is attacked by some black prisoners. And the reason why, because they found out that most of the pills that he was giving out to people were to black people. And so these black prisoners are like, we heard that you don't like black people, and we are going to make you like black people because of what you did. And apparently they had attacked him so bad, it kind of left him, not kind of, it did, completely catatonic. And so he's in his bad mental state. And so that's why he's here in this mental facility. but he hasn't talked for ever since that attack, honestly, in prison. But when it comes to this committee member, he doesn't feel bad for Steven at all. He's kind of like, no, he deserves to stay here in his facility for what he did. He destroyed so many family lives because he wanted to be some kind of god in his mind. So no, I don't care how bad his mental state is. He will never get parole at all. And so then we jump over to Nighthawk, who's right now meeting up with Deputy Mayor Strat. Now, when it comes to Deputy Mayor Strat, he actually does work alongside with Nighthawk, but on top of that, he does like what Nighthawk is doing for the black community. The problem is, though, Strat works for the actual mayor of the city, and when it comes to the actual mayor of the city, he does not like Nighthawk. And the reason why, because when it comes to the mayor, he is trying to get reelected. He's trying to get back in the office once again. And one of the things he's trying to do to get himself reelected is saying that he will handle all crimes in Chicago in a better way, or be more efficient in handling the crimes in Chicago. But the problem is, though, the South and the West doesn't really work with the police anymore. Instead, the South and the West, which are mostly black neighborhoods, call out for Nighthawk. And of course, Nighthawk comes out and he handled the problems in those areas. And that right there is something the mayor hates, because now it seems like the public no longer trusts the police. And if police don't do their job, then what the mayor is trying to say he's trying to do, which is handle all crimes across the city, then it makes him look bad, because it's not really him taking on the crimes. It's really Nighthawk taking on the crimes. And so right now, it's Strat saying, I'm telling you right now, the mayor is trying to take down all crimes, but now he's also coming after you because he hates what you actually have been doing for Chicago, even though it's more efficient than the police have been doing for the South and the West of Chicago. Now, the next section, we actually do see that Steven is going to break out of this mental facility by dressing up as a clown. And what I mean by that is we do see an employee right now taking Steven to a meeting room. Now, the meeting room is where Steven is supposed to meet with the committee to decide if he does get parole or not. Here's the thing, though. On his way there to the meeting room, they had already said he does not get parole at all. And so because his parole was denied, he needs to go back to his cell. Now, the employee who's right now escorting him to the meeting room gets told that and gets very upset. And the reason why he does get upset is the employee wanted to have a smoke break while they were kind of talking to Steven about his parole. But because his parole was denied, he now has to go back to his cell, which means that our first employee does lose his smoke break now. Now, while you do have our employee take Steven back to his cell, they are confronted by a clown. Now, the reason why this clown is here, because in this same mental facility, they also have children here who are patients. And so the clown is their entertainment for the day. Except you do have the clown and our first employee walk away to have a conversation and also have a smoke break. Now, the reason why our employee actually does leave Steven behind, because technically Steven has not moved, talked, or done anything at all in like 2 years. And so to our guy here, he's kind of like, I'm not worried. You know what? I'm gonna get that smoke break because I know this patient won't do anything at all. But that's the problem. You still left a patient on his own. And so while the clown and our employee here were having that smoke break, Steven gets up and walks away, and he hides from our employee. And so after the smoke break, you do have our guy who was supposed to watch Steven come back and find out, oh my God, Steven's not here. This is a problem. I have to find him. And we come to find out that Steven has snuck into the room where the clown and our guy here, who was supposed to watch Steven, were having that smoke break. And so while you have a guy looking for Steven, Steven goes into the room and kills off the clown. He comes behind the clown to kill him off to use his disguise as a way to break out of this mental facility. And so getting into the second chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with Nighthawk. Now, when we do, we actually see Nighthawk right now going to a drug house. Now, this takes place 5 weeks after the end of the first chapter where Steven had broken out of that mental facility. Either way, you do have Nighthawk going to this drug house. Now, the reason why he's coming here, because this drug house is hurting the Black community in Chicago. And so he's trying to figure out who is the new supplier of this new drug that is spreading around in the Black neighborhoods of Chicago. And so with that, Nighthawk breaks in. He does kill off a couple guys here and there, but he does corner one guy as a way to get the information that he is actually looking for. Now, here's the thing though, because as soon as Nighthawk does corner this guy does tell him, listen, I'm not the big guy here at all. Matter of fact, the big guy is kind of unknown to me, but he did give me a huge amount to spread across the different areas of Chicago. And of course, those areas being affected are Black neighborhoods. And so this is Nighthawk saying, okay, listen, who is it though? But the problem is when it comes to the guy that he is questioning, he dies. He literally spits up a ton of blood right in front of Nighthawk. And for Nighthawk, he's very confused. He's like, wait a second. I did not kill this kid at all. I broke his leg, yes, but he should not have died from that kind of injury. What had happened to him? And so he says, let me check on the rest of the people in this drug house. And when he does, when he comes back, he comes to find out there are a bunch of people right now who are just dead in this drug house. Like every single person that was part of this drug house had died because apparently they all took this new kind of drug that's been spreading across Chicago. And because this new drug is spreading across Chicago, you have people who are taking this drug dying left and right. And for example, everybody in this drug house died just like that. But then you have Nighthawk hear something, or he realized something. And so he does run into the bathroom. Now, when he does run into the bathroom, is what he finds in the bathroom. Of course, it was a baby that was drowning in his own blood. And luckily for Nighthawk, he was able to get that baby out and save its life. But it shows that this drug is going to kill a lot of people and ruin a lot of families as well. But then we see Nighthawk actually go to a nearby hospital. Now, when he does go to this nearby hospital, this is really more of Nighthawk going there to kind of get some help for the baby. But on top of that, he does know someone there, and that is Dr. Arredondo. Now, when it comes to Dr. Arredondo, I really thought she was going to be very important for the storyline, but unfortunately, she is not. Like, yes, she does become somewhat of a love interest, but that's really it for her character. Now, with that being said, though, we do see her right now being confronted by Nighthawk. And this is Nighthawk saying, hey, listen, I found this baby. It needs some kind of medical help. Now, she does say, unfortunately, the baby has to wait in line. And the reason why she said that, because while she was on her break, she realized that she has been called so many times. Because apparently in the ER, there are a lot of different problems happening at the moment. And so we kind of find out that apparently in the ER, it's completely booked. And the reason why, because other huge drug users in the city have come to the ER feeling very bad, and they're dying left and right, like the other drug users we saw in that drug house earlier, because they took that drug and that drug had killed them off left and right. And so you have drug users across the city who have been taking this drug are now dying left and right. Now, as we get into the third chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with Steven. Now, when it comes to the Nighthawk series, I have to remind you guys, it is part of the Marvel Max series, which means that when it comes to content, you may see some more adult things like naked people. And so when we actually do pick up with Steven, he's in Chicago. He's hiding out in some safe house. He killed a person to get to safe house, but when we actually do, he is naked. And so I can't show you that page or multiple pages because again, he is naked and I don't want to get screwed over on YouTube. And so the only thing you need to know is that right now he's in Chicago, he's watching the news, and he does hear about what's happening right now across Chicago, that drug poisoning. And so he's kind of intrigued to see what he has done in Chicago. And so as we get deeper into the third chapter, we actually do see right now, you do have city officials trying to calm down the public. And the reason why, because they don't want the public to freak out about the idea that right now there is some new kind of drug out there that can cause instant death after you take the pill. And so right now it's the city officials saying, don't worry, we're trying to get a handle on this new drug problem in Chicago. Now, as that's going on right there, you do have Nighthawk actually call up Dr. Arredondo. Now, when he does call her up, it's really her calling him, but she's telling him that she was able to get some samples of the drug so that he'll be able to actually analyze it. Except this man had already broke into the hospital that she worked at and stole the samples. And so when she called, she's like, hey, I got some samples for you. But then she's like, wait, where are the samples? He already stole them. And he told her, don't worry, I got it handled. Thanks for your help. Goodbye, later. But then we see that a meeting is going on between three particular people: the governor of Illinois, the mayor of Chicago, and also Deputy Mayor Stratt as well. Now, when it comes to this meeting, it's actually very, very important because they're talking about the idea that this is an actual problem in Chicago. Well, to two people, it is a problem because to the mayor, he honestly doesn't seem like it's a problem. And the reason why, because the only people who are dying right now across Chicago thanks to this new drug are drug addicts. And so to the mayor, he's kind of like, this is great because that means our city is finally getting cleaned up. But on top of that, though, we'll have no more drugs in our city if all the drug addicts are actually gone. Now, this is the mayor thinking that he'll finally have a clean city, but he has to realize something here. Even if you're able to remove all the current drug addicts, you're still going to have new ones pop up left and right to replace the drug addicts of the old ones. And so, yes, he may celebrate the idea the old drug addicts might all die off, but new ones are going to replace the old ones down the road. Now, when it comes to the deputy mayor, he's very upset in the idea that the mayor even said that. And the reason why, because even though these are drug addicts, they're still citizens of Chicago, and they're supposed to take care of them. They're supposed to help them, no matter what. And so right now, it's the deputy saying, how dare you basically turn your back against the people of Chicago because you feel like if they die, the city will finally be clean, even though that is a huge if that actually does happen. Now, when it comes to the governor, he's kind of like, listen, this drug problem is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse before it actually gets better. But then you have the governor actually tell the mayor and deputy mayor, we think we have an idea who could be the new supplier of this new drug. The problem is, though, they cannot get close to this person at all. Now, we come to find out why the mayor, the deputy mayor, and also the governor are unable to make a move on this new supplier. And the reason why? Because he is a federal judge. The new supplier of this drug that is spreading across Chicago right now is coming from this federal judge. Now, it's not like he's the one who's making it, but of course, he is the one who's heavily supplying this drug across Chicago. And the reason why I say that, because what he has been doing is corrupting smaller cops in different parts of the police department in Chicago to be couriers for him to spread the drug across Chicago. He's part of this new drug ring in Chicago. And so that's why the governor and the mayor and the deputy mayor are unable to do anything at all, because they need hardcore evidence to say he is actually guilty to take him down. So with them being unable to make a move, that gives Nighthawk the chance to actually make a move. And let's not forget, if you try to withhold any kind of information from Nighthawk, he's going to break your kneecaps. He's going to break your bones and make you beg for death until you are able to actually give what he wants to hear. And here's the thing, he does break the kneecap of this federal judge. And he does say, listen, if you don't tell me what I want to know, that other kneecap is about to go as well. And so you do have this federal judge actually tell Nighthawk everything he wants to know. Now, Nighthawk wants to kill off this guy, but unfortunately, Nighthawk did attack him at the middle of this golf course. And so that means you have a lot of witnesses right now realizing that, oh my gosh, there's Nighthawk right now, and it seems like he's about to kill off that federal judge. And so Nighthawk's kind of like, know what? I'm not going to kill you in front of these people, but you did suffer enough to give me what I want to get, which of course is information on this new drug ring. Because even though this federal judge is the one right now supplying this new drug in Chicago, someone has to give him the drug so that he'll be able to actually supply the drug addicts in Chicago with this new drug. But then we jump back over to the mayor. Now we have to remember, when it comes to this mayor, he honestly doesn't care about what happens to the people of Chicago. And the reason why, because to him, he's kind of like, listen, if the drug addicts actually die off, that means that helps us keep the streets clean when it comes to drugs across Chicago. But at the same time, though, you still have a lot of people dying left and right because of this new drug. And the problem is, though, could this technically spread into other things that could affect people who are not drug addicts at all? That's the fear the public has. But when it comes to the mayor, he's trying to downplay every single thing that has happened so far. Now, after his press conference, you do have Strat come over to him and try to tell him once again, what you are doing is actually wrong. You're downplaying this whole situation. You're not showing that you actually care for the people of Chicago. Now, this is where the mayor is going to mess up. And the reason why? Because you have the mayor say, listen, it's done, it's done. I told the city that this is not no big deal. We can all relax. Matter of fact, if I want to get reelected, I have to show the people I'm like them, a family man. Tomorrow is my son's birthday. And with that being said, I want cameras there to show them, the people of Chicago, that their mayor is also a family man. He goes down and celebrates with his kids or his wife with his kid's birthday. He wants to show the world this great picture of himself. But unfortunately, what he just did is open the door to have the most worst thing happen to this guy. And the reason why I said that, because we actually do pick up with Steven. And we have to remember, Steven is still out there just free to the world to do anything he wants to do. And right now it's him saying, I'm going to show the world I'm still able or still capable enough to make powerful poisons that can kill people off left and right. And so his next example is to go to the mayor's son's birthday party. And this is the real messed up part, because the mayor is not there. And so you do have Steven pretend to be this clown, to be the entertainment for this young boy's birthday party. But no one at this party realized that this is going to be their last day, that they are going to die by the hands of Steven. And so this is going to be a very dark day for the mayor as we work our way to the next chapter. And so as we get into the fourth chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with these two guys at a bar. Now, these two guys are not really that important for the story, just for this section really, but honestly not that much. And what I mean by that is these two guys at the bar, they do get into a fight. And the reason why they do get into a fight is because they were watching the news. And you have the news report that when it came to the mayor's son's birthday party, everybody died except the mayor because he was not there. But everybody else at that party, the children, the wives, the husbands, they all died just like that. And the news is telling the people of Chicago that they had died thanks to some kind of food poisoning. But the big question the city has right now is that is this food poisoning incident related to this new drug problem in Chicago? But unfortunately, no one has any kinds of answers at all. Either way, the two guys at the bar, they do get into a fight. And the reason why, because one guy feels like the mayor actually deserves this. And the reason why, because when it comes to Chicago, it's a really bad area. It's a really bad city to this guy. And he blames the mayor. He says the mayor has not done his job at all. The mayor has not tried to actually make Chicago better at all. And so with that being said, I think he actually deserves this, the death of his kid and his wife. Now, the other guy does get very upset because he's kind of like, how dare you? Yes, this man may be some corrupt mayor. Yes, this man may be a very bad mayor to us and to the rest of Chicago. But this is a man who's going through one of the worst tragedies to have ever in someone's life. This man lost his wife and his son all just like that. His entire family's gone just like that. And here you are saying that he deserves that? No, that is not fair, because that kid, that wife, they were innocent and they died. That right there is a real messed up thing to say. And so they do get in a fight, but the fight does get broken up by the bartender. But then we jump over to the mayor of Chicago. Now, when we do, this is the mayor right now getting ready for a press conference. And the reason why, because he has to talk to the city of Chicago about what happened to his wife and kid. And the reason why, because now you have the news and the public actually talking about the idea that his family's death could be related to this drug problem that's happening all over Chicago. And so he has to do this press conference to kind of talk about what happened to his family. But at the same time, this was the man who did a press conference earlier and tried to downplay the drug problem in Chicago. And so now he has to come back and say, I was wrong. I was wrong for downplaying the drug problem in Chicago. I should have taken this thing more seriously, and from here on out, I'm going to. And so he has to do this press conference, but he's having a hard time actually getting ready for it, because every time he wants to get up and go and do the press conference, he thinks about his wife and kid and realize they are dead, and most likely because he did not try to actually take this drug problem very seriously. And so it's kind of like, yeah, this is a very huge day for him. And when it comes to the mayor, he does admit that he was wrong for downplaying his drug problem, except he feels like he deserves death. And the reason why I say that, because he actually does kill himself off. Now, I'm not going to show this scene right here because it is suicide, but he is dead. He did kill himself off because now he feels like he is responsible for the death of his son and his wife. And so now he's officially dead. But then we jump over to Nighthawk. Now, when we do, this is Nighthawk right now having a conversation on the phone with Strat. And the reason why, because they're trying to figure out who could be behind this new drug problem in Chicago. Who is killing off all these different drug addicts across Chicago? And that is the moment everything comes together for Nighthawk. And the reason why, because Nighthawk does see a lot of police officers right now at different parks in Chicago confronting different people who could be the reason why they have this new drug problem in Chicago. And the reason why, because you have the deputy mayor tell Nighthawk that when he came to the mayor's wife hired a clown that was working in one of the many parks in Chicago, and he was at a good price, meaning that he was cheaper than most clowns in Chicago. And so she hired him to do their son's birthday party. And so what the deputy mayor is actually saying right now is that there is a possibility that the person who killed off the mayor's son and wife and all their guests at that party was the clown that she hired. And right now they're trying to figure out who was that clown that she actually hired. But then you have Nighthawk say, listen, I know the new drug that's hitting Chicago came from a certain kind of supplier, that supplier being a federal judge. But the federal judge was using crooked cops as a way to spread his drug across Chicago, kind of like them being couriers for him. And so Nighthawk says he has a list of people who could actually be behind the death of the mayor's wife and son, but on top of that, this new drug problem in Chicago. And the reason why he's saying all of this for, because Nighthawk also tells us that there was a huge shipment of drugs that had arrived in Chicago, but that huge shipment got taken away by someone else, somebody unknown. And so what Nighthawk is actually saying right now is that one of the couriers for that federal judge possibly got word of that drug shipment, went to that shipment, took the drugs, and began to spread the drugs across Chicago to begin his crazy killing spree in Chicago. And so we actually do pick up with Nighthawk. Now, when we do, this is Nighthawk right now working through the list of names of people who could have technically stolen the shipment of drugs to use it for their own personal gain. And so when he works through the list of couriers who work for that federal judge, he did select someone who would most likely stolen that huge shipment of drugs. Now, the person he selected is correct, but also incorrect as well. And the reason why, because that person he selected did steal the drugs. Unfortunately, he was killed off by Steven. And so when that guy stole the drugs and brought it back to his safe house, Steven found him, killed him off, took over the safe house, but then began to play around with that shipment of drugs to kind of change it a tad bit so that it would be very poisonous to whoever actually takes the drug. And so, yes, when it comes to Nighthawk, he did select the right person. It's just the person he select is already dead. And so when Nighthawk goes to that house where the guy actually lives, he will not find that guy. I mean, he'll find his dead body, but he's also going to find Steven. But when he actually does find Steven, it's too late. And what I mean is that when Nighthawk arrives, he does find the guy who most likely did steal the shipment. But when he finds him, that guy been dead for so long that bugs are technically crawling out of his dead bodies. But while you have Nighthawk kind of looking over the dead body and getting very sick at how the body actually looks, he's knocked out from behind by, of course, Steven. And so, yes, Nighthawk got it right, but at the same time, he got it wrong. And so we get into the 5th chapter. Now, when we do get into the 5th chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with Nighthawk right now being tied down. Now, with him being tied down, of course, this is where you have Steven begin the process of doing your usual bad guy thing, where you have Steven kind of talking to Nighthawk about his master plan, where you have Steven kind of talking to Nighthawk about the idea of why he's doing all of this for. And so what you have Steven actually tell Nighthawk is that when it comes to his reasoning behind all of this, because he felt like there was some kind of hole in his heart, some kind of hole in his soul. And he felt like every single person that he had killed off in Chicago, thanks to this new kind of drug that he had created, would basically kind of help fill in that hole in his soul. But the problem is, though, even though he killed off so many people in Chicago, that hole in his soul is not being filled up at all. Now, this is where we come to find out how Steven pulled all this off. And what Steven tells Nighthawk, but also tells us as well, when it came to a certain courier, a cop, the cop he killed off to get this safe house, that cop actually worked at the same mental facility that Steven was actually working at. And that cop just kept talking and talking about how the federal judge is technically getting drugs and trying to spread drugs across Gotham. And he has all these different cops who are dirty cops being couriers for the judge to spread the drugs across Chicago. And because this cop was talking so much while working at the same mental facility that Steven was being held in, Steven realized, I have a plan here. If I'm able to get my hands on that huge shipment, I could do some crazy things in Chicago. And so even though you had the mental facility believe that Steven could no longer talk or could no longer actually have any kind of mental activity, he was actually sitting there and plotting his escape. And after he was able to escape, he was also plotting how to get his hands on the drugs and how to use the drugs. And so that explains what happened so far in this entire story. Now, while you have Steven kind of telling Nighthawk all of this, Nighthawk was also trying to find a way to break free, to hopefully take down Steven. And so while you had Steven talking to Nighthawk, Nighthawk was able to actually find a way to break free by actually setting Steven on fire. But this is going to lead into a battle between the two characters. And so because you had Nighthawk actually set Steven on fire, Nighthawk has to get out of there. And the reason why, because when he did set Steven on fire, he also set the building on fire. And so the flames kind of cut a path between Steven and also Nighthawk as well. And so Nighthawk has to get out of there before he's also taken with the flames. But that also gives Steven the chance to kind of put the flames out on his body and find a way to actually be able to escape the building. And so with all the different commotions happening, oh, by the way, this safe house or this safe apartment actually was part of an apartment complex. And so with the building being on fire, you do have firefighters showing up, but you also have everybody else in this complex trying to leave as well. And so with all these different kinds of commotion, Steven was able to get away, but Nighthawk had to jump out the window, and right now he needs some serious medical help. And so you do have Nighthawk say, I'm going to go see my friend, the doctor, to hopefully get some kind of medical help because right now I need it really badly. Now, we actually do see Nighthawk go over to the same hospital that Dr. Aridano is working at. Now, remember what I said earlier. When it comes to Dr. Aridano, she is going to be the love interest for Nighthawk, but literally just for this section and the next one. And you see what I mean here in a moment, because you do have her right now being stopped by Nighthawk. And when he does stop her, he's all like, hey, I need your help. Now, when he comes to her, he's not wearing the mask at all. He's wearing his regular day clothes. And right off the bat, she knows, oh my God, you're Nighthawk. But she also knows who he is. Now, when it comes to Nighthawk, he is a billionaire or a millionaire. I have no idea how rich he is. But either way, he's one of those quiet ones where technically most people don't even know about him, but he does have the money. Now, with that being said, she does recognize him. She's like, oh my God, I know who you are. You're Kyle Richmond. But at the same time, she also knows that he is Nighthawk. And because he's done so much for her as Nighthawk, but apparently he has also done so much for the city of Chicago as Kyle, she kind of loves this man. And so she gives him a kiss. But she also tells him great news. The baby that he saved earlier is getting better. The problem is, though, they have to find the child's home, because if they don't, he'll go in foster care, which is something she and him both do not want to happen to the child. Either way, she does give him some kind of medical help. But the problem is, though, while they're kissing and talking, someone was actually watching them. Somebody with clown shoes. And we already know that it was Steven. And the reason why, because when we see the doctor leave Kyle behind to kind of go check up on the baby, she was being followed. But of course, she has no idea that she was being followed. And so as she works her way up to the baby's room to make sure that he is okay, while she's leaving the room, that is the moment she is grabbed from behind by Steven. And you have Steven inject the drug into her body, which of course kills her off just like that. She's dead. And so when it came to Kyle, someone else that he briefly cared for or loved was just taken away from him. And he has no idea because he's still down in ER. She died upstairs. And so when he finds out, it's kind of like, okay, he is definitely going to kill off Steven now. And so as we jump into the 6th chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with the city officials actually lying to the public. And what I mean by that is you have the city officials telling the public that they were able to get the guy who was giving out bad drugs across Chicago. Now, what they actually did was they got the guy who originally stole the shipment from the federal judge, the bad courier, the one that was killed off by Steven. But here's the thing. The city officials is telling the public, yeah, we got him. He's basically taken care of. Everything is okay now. But when it comes to the deputy mayor, he's all like, you guys are lying. The guy you said who is responsible for the drug poisoning across Chicago was your basic regular day cop. He was not no kind of scientist. There is no way he was able to take that drug and change it into some kind of poison drug. There's no way. The real person behind this is still out there. And really, he's correct. The real person is still out there. It's Steven. He got away, but it all comes down to Nighthawk. But getting back over to Nighthawk, we do see Nighthawk finding out that the woman that he briefly began to start to like is now dead. And seeing her dead, it reminds him of his parents. People who were taken out of this world, who were innocent and was just trying to be a good person in this world. And now they were killed off by some crazy man, just like his parents were. And so this is a man saying, I am going to get revenge for the death of a lady that I was going to hopefully had some kind of future with. Which honestly, we all know he may or may not had a future with her, but he could have had one if she had stayed alive. But getting back over to Steven, we actually do see Steven right now in the streets just watching the news talk about the idea that they were able to get the guy who was responsible for the drug poisoning, even though Steven is the one who is responsible and he's watching the news say, yeah, we got him, everything's good. But of course, that was a huge lie. Now, some cops do come up to him and these cops realize who he actually is, that technically he is a bad guy. But unfortunately, they're killed off by Steven and he's able to continue on. But we kind of find out he has something in the bag that he's carrying, something very important in that bag. But getting back over to Nighthawk, we do see him right now gearing up. And when I say gearing up, I mean literally he went back to his base, got all the gear he needs to say, you know what, it's time for me to go after this guy, to bring this guy to justice, because this guy killed off someone I actually cared for. And that right there is not okay. And so this is Nighthawk saying, you know what, when I find Steven, I am for sure going to kill him off. And so this is an angry Nighthawk. But this leads into the final section of the book, where you do have Nighthawk right now finding Steven, and Steven went to the water pumps of the city. Now, this is actually very important. And the reason why, because this is right now Nighthawk realizing that what Steven is trying to do. Steven is trying to drop his poison into the water supply of Chicago so that it will be spread across Chicago completely. And so if anybody drinks the water from the water supply of Chicago, they are going to be affected by his poison. And so this is Nighthawk saying, listen, I don't know what you think you're going to do here, but when it comes to the filter of this place, it'll be able to filter out your poison, which means that you'll be unable to actually pull off your game plan. Except that is the moment you have Steven tell Nighthawk, oh, you got my plan completely wrong, my dude. That in reality, what I'm trying to do is kill off a certain baby. The baby that Nighthawk said at the very beginning of this book, the one that he left behind with the doctor, the one that she cared for so much, Well, Steven found out about the baby, grabbed the baby, and now he put the baby in the bag and threw it into the water supply, meaning that the baby is going to be one, drowned in that bag, or two, probably crushed in some kind of facility machine. And so Nighthawk has to save the baby, but to also stop Steven as well. Now, to go ahead and kind of wrap up today's video, you do have Nighthawk actually being able to save the baby, but at the same time, he does kill off Steven by literally blasting a hole in the guy's chest, like a hole in this guy's chest. It's all bloody. Either way, he's dead. Steven is dead and the baby is saved. Now, we do get an extra page where it does seem like Nighthawk has an idea of possibly adopting the baby. And honestly, it's kind of like a whole Robin thing right here. And what I mean by that is we have to remember Nighthawk is Batman in this book. It's just that Marvel couldn't use Batman. And so they made Nighthawk. And so when it comes to Nighthawk, he needs a Robin. This child right here has the capability to actually become the Robin of this universe. But with that, and so getting into today's video, we actually do pick up one day before the present day. And when we do, we actually pick up in the country known as Sudan. And we actually pick up with a refugee camp. Now with this camp, it does seem to be a normal night. Everybody is relaxing, everything is okay. Except that is the moment you have someone call out ganja weed. Now, when they say that, that right there means a group of people are on their way to do something to this camp. And actually, they do. This camp is attacked by a group called Ganja Weed. Now, the Ganja Weed group is going to be very important for this entire storyline. But right now, we're watching them technically burn down this entire village and also doing some more horrible things that I'm not going to show on the screen. But you have to remember, this is a Marvel Max series, so it does get very dark. But then we jump 4 weeks ago, and when we do, we actually do pick up with Nighthawk fighting against Hyperion. Now, we have no idea why in the world these two characters are fighting against each other, but they are fighting at the base for the Squadron Supreme. Now, it seems like Nighthawk broke into this place because we have to remember that Nighthawk was offered to actually join the team by Blur, but he did tell Blur that he did not want to join the team, which means that he is technically breaking into this place, but for unknown reasons. And so apparently he was caught by Hyperion and he's trying to escape, but it's really more of a regular day man trying to fight against a superpower alien being who has all the powers to technically destroy the Earth. And so right now, it's not a fair fight. You have Hyperion just beating down Nighthawk, and we're left to believe that Nighthawk had actually failed against fighting against Hyperion. Now that is the moment where we actually jump over to the Pentagon. Now when we do, we kind of find out that we do have a bunch of high priority people right now in the Pentagon talking about what happened in Sudan. Now, this conversation actually takes place 6 days prior from the present day. So we're still in the past, but it takes place after Hyperion and Nighthawk have fought, but before that camp we saw at the very beginning of the storyline getting attacked. And so right now, apparently you have these people in the Pentagon saying that apparently there is some new kind of mercenary. Now, when it comes to this mercenary, he is actually attacking all the different groups right now who are fighting in Sudan. Because right now you have so many different groups in Sudan who want to do something different for the country that right now they're fighting all over the country. But apparently this mercenary is attacking every single group, left and right. Bam, 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 bam. And they have no idea why he's doing that. Because at first it may look like he did belong to one group, but now they're realizing this guy belongs to no group at all. So what's the point of him attacking all these different groups? Is he trying to make the conflict even worse between these groups? But when we jump into the next section, we kind of pick up in Sudan, but we're still 4 days in the past. But with this section right here, we do come to find out that apparently it was Nighthawk, the mercenary, who was going around attacking all these different groups in Sudan, trying to make the conflict between the groups even worse than it already was. But that is the moment where we actually do pick up with a character known as Taylor. Now, Taylor works for the military, and he came out here to see how bad was the conflicts between the different groups. And right now, he is currently meeting up with a tribal leader where his tribe was actually attacked by Nighthawk. Now, of course, we know that when it comes to Nighthawk right now, apparently, he's attacking different groups who want to do something different for the country of Sudan. And so when it comes to this tribal group, they're one of the many groups who are trying to do something different for the country. Now, you do have the tribal leader tell Taylor that it had to be an American who attacked their area. And the reason why, because he saw what the guy was using. American Jeep, American weapons, American armor. Everything looked American about him, which right now makes America looks bad. And so that is why Taylor is here to make sure that it was an American who actually attacked the country. Either way, he does hand Taylor a piece of metal. And when it comes to that metal, they have no idea what kind of metal it is or where the metal actually came from. And this piece of metal is going to be very, very crucial for this story. But then we jump back over to America. Now, when we actually jump back over to America, we do pick up with the general right now, General Alexander, meeting up with Hyperion. And the reason why, because his game plan is to actually send Hyperion into Sudan to figure out who is this American mercenary. Because right now, this American mercenary is attacking different groups in Sudan and causing more problems in Sudan. And so sooner or later, it's going to look bad on America that some random mercenary that is American is making things worse in another country. And so right now they want to send in Hyperion to find this mercenary and to stop him. Even though we know it is Nighthawk, they don't know that yet. Now you do have Hyperion wonder, why in the world should they go? Or should he go, sorry. And you have the general say, because of this right here. This piece of metal. And this metal, it comes from your spaceship. That right there is alarming, because how in the world did a piece of metal from my spaceship that we have at our base here was able to get over there to Sudan? And apparently the American mercenary had it on him. And so that is how you have Hyperion now going over to Sudan to figure out who is this American mercenary. And so we finally reach the present day. Now, when we do, we actually pick up right now with Hyperion arriving to Sudan. Now, when he does arrive to Sudan, this is him right now meeting up with Taylor. And when he does meet up with Taylor, is Taylor telling him what's happening right now in Sudan. That technically right now in Sudan, you have 4 different groups attacking one another. The government is one of them. Then you have 2 rebel groups as well who are trying to liberate Sudan. And the final group is a refugee group. And they came from another country. They are a completely different race. Now, here's the thing, though. That last group right there gets attacked the most. And the reason why? Because they are a different race than the people of Sudan. And so right now, this mercenary, he didn't attack here, but he did attack the other 3 groups, the rebel groups and the government. And so right now, you have so much conflict happening at the moment. Now, the camp that Hyperion's at right now is the same camp that was actually attacked at the very beginning of our video. And this was a refugee camp. And so once again, the 4th group is getting attacked the most, but you still have other fighting happening between the other 3 groups. Either way, it's Hyperion's goal to figure out who is this mercenary that is actually making things a whole lot worse. And so 1 hour after that conversation right there, you have Hyperion fly around Sudan to hopefully find the mercenary that comes from America, which of course is Nighthawk. And matter of fact, you have Hyperion being able to actually find Nighthawk. And when he does find Nighthawk, it's a very big moment, because now we're about to have round 2 between these two characters. Because you have to remember, they fought apparently 4 weeks ago, but we saw Hyperion beat down on Nighthawk. And so this time, it could be the same thing unless Nighthawk came prepared. And this is another reason why I say Nighthawk is Batman in these comics. Because when it comes to Nighthawk, with prep time, he'll be able to actually handle a lot of different things, like Batman does with prep time. And so even though you have Hyperion right now just doing everything he can to get to Nighthawk, and you have Nighthawk right now doing everything he can to keep Hyperion away from him, once you have Hyperion being able to get close to Nighthawk, you have Nighthawk throw a couple punches, but the last one is actually very important because he does hit you have Nighthawk hit Hyperion in the head. And when he does that, it's a huge moment. And the reason why, because Hyperion says, I felt that. Wait a second. You actually hurt me. But how? And then that is the moment you have Nighthawk say, yeah, I planned for that. And he literally punches Hyperion and knocks him out. Somehow Nighthawk got powers and being able to actually beat up now on Hyperion and actually hurt him. And so getting into the second chapter, it does pick up where the first chapter actually left off at, except it does focus more on what Nighthawk has to say about this situation. And apparently what Nighthawk is saying right now is that even though he's technically able to beat down on Hyperion, it still hurts him. And that right there is very, very crucial. And I want you guys to remember that right there, what he's telling us right now is actually very, very important. And so this begins the idea of us learning how in the world was he able to actually hurt Hyperion. But we have to jump back 3 months ago. And when we do, we kind of find out that apparently when it came to Kyle Richmond, who is Nighthawk, he's having a business meeting. Now, guys, remember, he is Batman of this universe, which means that he would have some kind of big company in Chicago like Batman does in Gotham City. Either way, right now, you do have Nighthawk or Kyle Richmond having a meeting about the idea that a chunk of money that he had given over to Sudan to actually help Sudan get better had just disappeared. That apparently the money went to the wrong group of people, and now it caused more problems out in Sudan rather than making things better, what he wanted to do originally with his money. And so right now is Kyle wondering how in the world is that even possible, because they gave millions of dollars over to Sudan to help Sudan get better and deal with all the conflicts they have in their country. And now it seems like they have even more conflict thanks to his money. And so you do have one of his board members tell him, when it comes to other countries and their problems, a lot of times other countries just want to throw money at their problems, hoping that money is the way to actually solve these problems. But in reality, money is not the way to solve these problems. A lot of time, money continues the problems, or actually makes the problems even worse. And so even though what you're trying to do is a good thing, in reality, you just made it even worse. And so we then jump back right before we saw Hyperion and Nighthawk fought the first time at the military base that belongs to the Squadron Supreme. Because remember, in the earlier chapter of this video, we saw the first fight and we saw Nighthawk getting beat down by Hyperion because apparently Nighthawk was breaking into the military base, but we had no idea why he was breaking into the military base. And we kind of find out why here in this chapter right here, because apparently when it comes to Nighthawk, the reason why he was breaking into the military base is because of Emil Burbank. Now remember, Emil Burbank was a character who was kind of like the Lex Luthor of this universe, the Lex Luthor to Hyperion in some kind of way. Either way, when he came to Hyperion, when he arrived to Earth, let's not forget his spaceship had some kind of alien virus. It was an airborne virus, but it gave a lot of people around the world different abilities. Now, when it came to Emil, it made him very smart. But in earlier videos that we did, we saw the military ask Emil to work on different projects to bring down each member of the Squadron Supreme. Because just in case they turn evil, the American military needs something to actually stop them, especially when it comes to Hyperion. And apparently Emil found a way to stop Hyperion, and Nighthawk found out about it, and so that is why he broke into the military base to find what Emil had made to actually stop Hyperion. Now, of course, while he was trying to leave the military base, and of course, when he does run into Hyperion, it does lead into a fight between the two characters. Now, with that being said, though, we saw what happened earlier. It was Hyperion being able to beat down Nighthawk. But now with this section right here, we get more details of the fight. And matter of fact, we see that Nighthawk try to do different things as a way to hopefully get away from Hyperion. You know, at first he tries to fight him, which honestly is a bad idea. He then try to hit weak points, which again is a bad idea. And then he tries other methods to hopefully get away from Hyperion. But unfortunately for Nighthawk, when it comes to Hyperion, he is the Superman of this universe. He's not that easy to take down. But on top of that, guys, we have to remember, when it came to Hyperion, he does not have a well-known weakness yet. We have not seen no kind of magical rock like kryptonite being able to bring him down. We haven't seen magic yet. And so honestly, we have no idea what Hyperion's weak to. But guys, we also have to remember that Nighthawk did take something that could technically hurt Hyperion, but apparently he can't use it right now. He wants to use it later on. And so while he tries to get away, apparently it does lead up to the moment where you have Hyperion about to punch Nighthawk, and we know it's going to hurt Nighthawk a lot. And so then we jump 10 days before the present day. And when we do, we actually do pick up right now with Nighthawk attacking this village. Now, this village is actually very important because it belonged to that tribal leader we saw earlier, where he said that his village was attacked by an American mercenary. He had an American Jeep, American weapon. He also left behind a piece of metal. And he was right. It was American. It was Nighthawk. And this is the moment where he does attack the village. Now, the reason why Nighthawk did that is to get Hyperion's attention. And he knew how to get Hyperion's attention because he then plants the piece of metal that was found earlier right underneath the broken tank. It was the perfect way to bring Hyperion over to Sudan, because with that piece of metal being found in a tank, of course, he'll believe, okay, I was attacked by an American mercenary who left this behind. And that will then get sent over to America to hopefully bring Hyperion to Sudan. And so then getting to the end of the second chapter, we actually do pick up with the same fight we saw at the end of the last chapter. The only difference is, though, this fight is now coming to us from Nighthawk's perspective. And this is going to be very important. And the reason why, because now you have Nighthawk telling us how it felt like fighting against Hyperion, or fighting against one of the four groups that belongs to Sudan right before Hyperion had appeared. But again, it's Nighthawk saying, I planned for all of this. I knew that sooner or later he would show up. And here he is right now. He showed up, and this is perfect. Means my plan is coming together great. And then we actually see them fight once again, and we do see the same thing, where we saw Nighthawk being able to actually hurt Hyperion. Except this time we get a couple more pages to see the battle actually continue on. And with the battle being able to actually continue on, we actually do see that Nighthawk was able to shoot a fake gun. When I say a fake gun, I mean that he was able to take his hand and make it look like a gun, and he shoots it like he's actually shooting a real gun, and somehow he was able to still hurt Hyperion. And that right there is very, very crucial. And the reason why, because at first it really does look like somehow Nighthawk was able to use his hand as a imaginary gun and actually shoot Hyperion. But in reality, that is not the case. And you see what I mean as we go through this book, because honestly, it's a great idea. And so getting into the third chapter, we finally pick up after the fight we saw in the first two chapters, Nighthawk versus Hyperion. And we kind of find out that Nighthawk took Hyperion back to his secret base. Now, when Nighthawk did that, when you have Hyperion wake up, he realized that one, they're somewhere else, but two, he realized that he was knocked out for a good period of time. But now for Hyperion, he needs to figure out, how in the world did Nighthawk hurt me? Because Nighthawk was a man for a long period of time not having powers. And then out of nowhere, he has powers and he's able to actually hurt me. That's not cool. Now for Nighthawk, he knows that what Hyperion is trying to think about. Like, how in the world did he get powers? And so you have Nighthawk say, you're never going to figure it out. But either way right now, I brought you here. I plan to bring you here so that you'll help me out with some certain problems over here. Now for Hyperion, he honestly at first does not care about the idea of what's happening right now in Sudan. Matter of fact, he wants to kill Nighthawk because one, Nighthawk hurt him, and two, Nighthawk is a dangerous man if he does have powers now. And so this is Hyperion saying, I need to kill you off because now you might have powers and that could be a problem. And you have Nighthawk say, see, I knew you were not ready just yet. And then you have Nighthawk knock out Hyperion once again. But then we pick up at a different location in Africa. Now we have no idea where, but it does look like a secret base. Now with that being said though, we do pick up with a set of characters that we actually saw in the earlier parts of our coverage over the Squadron Supreme. Because right after our heroes came together and became a team, they went on a mission to another part in Africa. And of course, they were sent there by the American military to go after someone who was a power being, meaning that they had some kind of powers, and they were ruling that area of Africa. Now, of course, when the American military sent the Squadron Supreme over there, they thought our heroes would be able to actually handle that mission very easily. But of course, they couldn't and made things worse in that area in Africa. Now, these set characters right here, they came out of nowhere and told the Squadron Supreme to never come back to Africa, that America does not need to help out Africa at all. Because when it comes to America, America always makes things worse when it comes to helping out other countries, especially countries in Africa. And so right now, you actually have these set characters say, we are the protectors of Africa, and we do not need any help from anybody in America. And if you come here ever again, we will fight you and we will possibly kill you. And so when they saw Hyperion and Nighthawk fighting in Sudan, they were like, Hyperion knew the rule. We told him to stay away from Africa. And now he's back here. He just broke that rule. And so now we have to go and handle him. But getting back over to Hyperion and Nighthawk, this is the moment where you do actually have Nighthawk wake Hyperion back up. And when Hyperion wakes back up, it's Nighthawk telling him again, you are going to help me if you like it or not. If you say no again, we can literally keep doing this over and over and over again until you actually realize that you're going to help me. And so this is Hyperion saying, okay, let me help him out. If I do help him out, then I may figure out how in the world did Nighthawk get powers and how he's able to actually beat me over and over again. And that is the moment where we actually jump over to another rebel camp. Now, when we do, of course, we see that right now, the Janjaweed group is right now attacking this refugee group. And when they do, they're trying to kill off every single person who is a refugee. Now, that is the moment they are actually confronted by Hyperion. Now, with Hyperion being here, he is actually able to take out the entire Janjari group that came here to take down this refugee group. But while he's actually taking down people left and right, of course, that is the moment he realized that this is a huge problem here in Sudan. That right now, innocent people like the refugees who are just trying to find a new country to live in are now being attacked in this new country just because of their race or where they actually came from. And so what he sees right now is war. And he realized when it comes to war, war is horrible. But also with war, there are so many different kinds of tools. And with those tools, they're just horrible things used as a way to win a war. And so this is Hyperion saying, I shouldn't care, but he realized he does care and he wants to help out Sudan so bad. But that is the moment where you do have Nighthawk appear. Now, when Nighthawk appears, it's really more of him saying, I know what you're thinking. I know that right now you're actually thinking about the idea of you want to help out this country. Because at first you don't want to care, but then you realize what's happening over here. Now you care. You're such an easy person to read. Now with Nighthawk saying that, he's really saying that he knows every single thing about Hyperion, how he feels, or how he's going to act over different kinds of situations. It's him saying, I know everything about you, Hyperion. Now, for Hyperion, he's still trying to figure out if Nighthawk has some kind of powers. But on top of that is him kind of figuring out, okay, if you do have powers, do you have the ability to be a telepath? And Nighthawk realizes or knows what Hyperion's thinking. He's like, dude, no, I'm not a telepath. Again, you're such an easy person to read. You're trying so hard to figure out how in the world I got powers and what my powers are. I knew you would think that I am some kind of telepath now, and I'm not. So let's move on to the next part of my plans. But then we jump over to another group of soldiers. Now, when we actually do, these soldiers right here, they actually work for the Sudan government. Either way right now, they're going after another group of people. Now, this could be a refugee group. Either way right now, they're being stopped by these soldiers and about to be arrested by these soldiers. And everything they have on them, food and supplies, they're going to take to their camp is about to be taken away by these soldiers who work for Sudan's government. Either way, that is the moment you have Hyperion step in. Because with Hyperion stepping in, it's him realizing that he needs to care. Because even the government is corrupted. Right now, the government is not even trying to help out their own people, but also going after other people who are just trying to find somewhere safe to live and sleep at for the night, or a different area in Sudan that's not so dangerous than the other areas. These are just refugees just trying to leave harsh areas. And of course, Sudan's government is making things even harder on them. Either way, you do have Hyperion stop these soldiers and he asks them, who is your boss? Tell me your boss name and where I can find him, because this right here is messed up. You as the government should be helping out your people and you are not. So tell me, where is your leader? And so that is the moment where we actually do see Hyperion go over to the capital. Now, when he does, we see him meet up with the president of Sudan, and that is President Omar. Now, this is where things get a tad bit crazy, because you have Hyperion tell us that when it comes to the president, he's one behind all the mess going on right now in Sudan, because what he's doing is he does use the soldiers as peacekeepers, but in reality, he used them as a way to collect supplies from refugees who are trying to leave the country or trying to find safe areas in the country. But on top of that, the rebel groups out there who are trying to liberate Sudan, they're also being used by Omar as a way to attack these refugee groups because these refugees are using up a lot of resources, food, clothes, water, and the list goes on and on. And so this is Omar saying, if these people do not want to stand with me, then they have to go. But they're not going to take supplies with them that belongs to the country. And so with that, all this conflict is because of this man right here. Now, you do have Hyperion wanting to kill him off, but he says, no, you have two options. Stop all this mess right now, or I'm going to bring in the UN. And of course, the UN is the United Nations. Now, for Omar, he does not care. And the reason why he doesn't care, because that is the moment you have Taylor walk in. And when Taylor walks in, you have Taylor say, listen, man, you have to listen. You can't kill him. And the reason why, because he gives us very important information. And with that information, we do learn a lot of different things about different targets that we are trying to take out. Targets who are technically terrorists to our country. And so that is why we cannot kill them off. Because if we do try to kill them off, we lose all that information we need to find these different people who are technically terrorists to America. And so that is why America doesn't want to kill off Omar, because he gives them information. And also, they pay him for that information. And so with them being paid for that information, they technically really cannot actually kill him off. But with that payment, he's giving that money over to the rebel groups so that they are able to get better supplies. And with better supplies, you're able to take out these refugee groups out very easy now. And so he's technically funding all the bad things happening right now in Sudan. And so you have Hyperion say, no, this makes no sense. Forget America and what they're trying to do. And so he goes ahead and snaps the neck of Omar. He says, no, this is all wrong. We can find our terrorists out in the world with our own resources and better ways than this right here, because America is actually making things worse. When you pay him, that money is going to those groups who are attacking innocent people. The conflict does not stop. It just keeps going on and on and on. And that right there is the main problem in this country. And so you have Hyperion leave and tells Taylor to go ahead and clean up the mess. And so to wrap up the third chapter, when you have Hyperion and Nighthawk trying to leave the capital, well, of course, they cannot leave the capital. And the reason why? Because that is the moment they are actually confronted by the group of Africans who said all of Africa is protected by them. They don't want any kind of help from America at all. And so with Hyperion being here, they broke that rule because they told Hyperion, do not come back here, because if you do, we're going to kill you. And right now, they're here to kill Hyperion, because again, Africa is off limits to heroes of America. But getting into the final chapter, we actually do jump back to the moment where you had Nighthawk breaking into that military base that belongs to the Squadron Supreme. Because remember, he was trying to steal something from Emil Burbank's laboratory that was a way to actually stop Hyperion. And apparently, he did find something. And so when he found that item, he was on his way out there. And of course, get reminded, he was stopped by Hyperion on his way out. And remember, when it came to Hyperion, it led to their first battle. But every single time we jump to this section right here, we're left to believe that Hyperion was able to actually do something to Nighthawk. But we come to find out he wasn't able to. Nighthawk was able to get away, which honestly makes sense because with his story, he had to get away. If Hyperion was able to punch Nighthawk, Nighthawk would be in the hospital for days on days. Either way, right now, you have Nighthawk saying that thanks to the alarms going off because something else was happening on the military base, I was actually able to escape and get away without Hyperion finding me a second time around, and get away with what I was looking for that could be used to actually stop Hyperion. Now, what he found in Emil Burbank's laboratory, he does take it over to a group of scientists who works for his company. Now, at first, you have Nighthawk try to just see if the item could actually work. And apparently it can work, but not this one right here. It has to be modified in a way to actually work on Hyperion. And so you have this scientist tell Kyle, hey man, give me 3 weeks and I'll be able to actually pull it off. And so this device, this weapon is the reason why Nighthawk is actually able to do some kind of damage to Hyperion. It's all coming together now. But then we jump back over to the moment where you actually had Nighthawk just defeat Hyperion in their second fight. And with him being able to actually knock out Hyperion, his goal was to take Hyperion back to his hideout in Sudan. But the problem was, while he was trying to carry Hyperion, or really drag Hyperion, that was the moment he was confronted by more men who work for the different groups in Sudan. And so right now, they're coming after Nighthawk because he's this American mercenary causing more problems in Sudan. But you had Nighthawk being able to take these guys down, but he uses guns. That right there is a red flag, because if you have powers and if you're able to actually stop Hyperion, why can't you use your powers on these soldiers right here? It just makes things 10 times crazier. And so now you're wondering, how in the world did he really take down Hyperion? What was in that device that made Hyperion so easy to take down? Because he had to use it on Hyperion as a way to actually defeat Hyperion. Either way, once Nighthawk is able to take these guys down, he then continues to drag Hyperion back to his hideout in Sudan. But do we pick up with the moment where you had Hyperion and Nighthawk work together? And of course, they were attacking one of the rebel groups. Now, while you had Hyperion go on a rampage and killing off most of the soldiers, you had Nighthawk go into the prison. And the reason why, because this group right here was locking up women who were technically sexually assaulted by a soldier. And the problem was, though, they had to go on trial to prove that they were actually assaulted. And in their country, apparently you have to have 4 men witnesses to say that you were actually assaulted, if you want them to believe that you were actually assaulted, to show that you are innocent, not guilty. But the problem is, though, she's not going to find 4 men to say, yeah, she was assaulted. And so her trial is not fair, and she will be locked up down the road. And so you have Nighthawk go in this prison and kill off all the soldiers who were guarding this prison, and then let every single prisoner out, especially this one girl right here. And so it's kind of like, yeah, Nighthawk came here to fix the problems in Sudan, and he's trying his best by using Hyperion as well. And so that is the moment where we actually jump over to the present day, where you have Hyperion and Nighthawk fight against the African heroes. Now, while they're fighting against one another, you do have the African heroes actually point something out here. And what they said, that when it comes to Hyperion, when it comes to Nighthawk, their methods are not good methods at all to help out Sudan. That their methods in helping are actually making things worse in Sudan. And what they're trying to say is that if you're trying to actually help the country out, you can't just come here and just throw money at the country. Say, oh, here's some money. Here's this. Use the money as a way to make things better here. Because most likely the money you give is most likely going to make things even worse out here in the country. That money could be used to do more bad things in the country. And so the idea of giving money to a country as a way to help the country is honestly a bad idea. But then when it comes to Hyperion, who's all like, okay, we'll just kill off bad people. But then they said, you can do that, but there always will be someone who is going to replace the person that you had killed off. And most likely the new person coming in could be just as bad as the old person you took out. And so technically, both of your methods are not going to work. And matter of fact, both of your methods are going to make things even worse here in this country. That is why we say, leave us alone, because we have to find our own way to fix the problems in Africa. And right now, that's not you. You're just making things even worse. Do you understand that? And so you have Hyperion like, oh my God, she's right. Our methods are not going to work. And so he tells Nighthawk to stop. But for Nighthawk, he's kind of like, why? We can beat them and still help this country right after that. But it's Hyperion saying, no, what she said is true. Our methods, yours and mine, they're not going to work. Instead, they're going to make things even worse here. And we can't have that. And so you have Hyperion leave and you have Nighthawk wonder, okay, I guess, do I stay here or go back to America now? And so to close on this video, we actually do find out how in the world Nighthawk was able to defeat Hyperion. And what we kind of find out is that when it comes to Nighthawk, the item he stole from Emil Burbank was actually an item that can make Hyperion think that he's actually being hurt. But on top of that, make him feel like he's being hurt. But in reality, he's not being hurt at all, and his body is not being damaged at all either. But his brain will think his body is being damaged. His brain will think that he's actually getting hurt. But in reality, he's not. And that was a clever way to actually find a way to hopefully defeat Hyperion down the road if he ever does become too powerful to be stopped. And so with that being said, it was a way for Emil to help out the military to find a way to stop Hyperion. And so now Nighthawk has a way to actually slow down Hyperion. Either way, this wraps up today. And so getting into today's video, we actually do pick up with the opening pages of this book, reminding us what happened at the very end of Supreme Power. Because remember, when it came to the very end of Supreme Power, George Bush had to talk to the public and announce a new law. And the reason why, because the public found out that Hyperion was an alien. That was his big secret. And so when he was going around being a superhero and working for the military and the government, the world believed that he was just a regular human being who gained some powers out of nowhere. But now they know, no, this dude actually came from space. Now, on top of that, in that same story, it was also told to the public that there are other people out there who also have powers, but their powers came from a virus that came from Hyperion spaceship. And so what George Bush announced was a new law to kind of ease the flames, because when the public found out, they were ticked off. They were angry at the government and they were angry at the military. And so what George Bush actually did was he made a new law. And when it came to this new law, he said, if you are going to be some kind of super being in America, you have to now work for the American government. And so that means if America military knows about you, or they have their eye on you, but they don't know for sure that you are some kind of superpower being, you are now been recruited into the American military and you now must work for the military. Now, with all that being said, we did see that the government and the military did go around and start beginning to pick up different people that they had somewhat knew about who had some kind of abilities. Now, when it comes to General Alexander, the latest general in this series so far, he's going to make two different teams. One team is going to be out there in the public, meaning that when they're out there fighting against some super villain or saving lives, the public will see them and get the chance to know them. But the second team will be more of like Black Ops. They'll go to different areas around the world and take care of some different problems that are affecting America's chance of, making the world better. And so you'll have two teams, one Black Ops, one public. And so the first few pages, we do see the general begin to decide who is going to be on which team, starting with Hyperion. And Hyperion is going to be on the public team. And the reason why, because by this point, the public knows so much about him. And sometimes the public still looks at him as a hero. And so it makes sense to put him on the public team. Now, the next person up is Blur. Now, remember, Blur is just the Flash of this universe. Now, this is the moment you have the general had to think about what to do with Blur. Because when it came to Blur, who is Flash of this universe, he was actually a popular hero in America. And matter of fact, he was the second hero to pop up in America right after Hyperion. The thing was, he was found by two agents who wanted to use him as a way to promote different company brands. So he would go around being a hero, but he would carry on his jacket, pants, shoes, whatever, different logos of different brands from different companies as a way to promote them, but for him to make some kind of money. And so he was also as popular as Hyperion. And the question is right now what to do with him, because now he's also being forced to work for the American government. And so it seems like the general may put him on the public team like Hyperion, because just like Hyperion, the public knows so much about him. It makes sense to go ahead and put him on the public team. And so the next two up is actually Dr. Spectrum and also Amphibian. Now remember, when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, he is just the Green Lantern of this universe. But when it comes to Amphibian, she's just the Aqua person of this universe. She's kind of representing Aquaman, or honestly, Mara, Aquawoman. Either way, though, when it comes to these two characters, you do have the military trying to decide what to do with these characters. Now, here comes the problem, though, because these two characters are madly in love with one another. And so for the general, he's very concerned about putting these characters on two different teams. But at the same time, though, he has no choice. And so when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, he will be on the Black Ops team. And the reason why, because his military background, it makes sense to go ahead and put him on the Black Ops team. Now, when it comes to Amphibian, she'll be on the public team. And the reason why, because to the general, her powers are technically pointless. And honestly, I feel like that was shots fired toward DC when it comes to Aquaman, but that's just my own personal opinion. Either way, though, right now, they're saying that because her powers are technically pointless, it'll make sense for her to be on the public team rather than the Black Ops team, because she can't read minds or anything, so what's the point of having her on the Black Ops team? Now, here is another thing to focus on right now, because in the early parts of Supreme Power, Amphibian killed some people because they were scared of her. And of course, their reaction scared her and made her think that they were trying to kill her. And so she did kill off two people. And so what the general is going to do is lie about her character and say that was not her. That was somebody else. That matter of fact, Amphibian comes from Atlantis. And because Atlantis is at the bottom of the ocean, by the time the human race is able to actually go to the bottom of the ocean, it will be years on years on years. And by that time, everybody will be gone. Either way, they're going to lie about the origin of Amphibian. Now, the next three characters that we are going to focus on is Arcania, Shape, and Emil. Now, when it comes to these three characters right here, we have to remember that we first met these characters back in the Hyperion miniseries, and that was it. And so we're still learning more about these characters as we cover Supreme Power. Now, with all that being said, when it came to the Hyperion miniseries, I honestly feel like those characters right there were the stars of that book, not Hyperion, which is sad because it was Hyperion's own miniseries, but he wasn't really the star of his own book. It was really these three characters right here. Anyways, though, when it comes to Arcania, she has the ability to warp reality on a quantum level. And what I mean by that is she can pull other things from different realities into their reality. But it has to be a reality that's next to theirs. And so she can't pull anything from a reality that's two realities away, which honestly makes things a tad bit confusing. Now, when it comes to Emil, he's just Lex Luthor. Like, when it comes to him, when he got his powers, it made him very smart, which is a great thing. But he's technically the Lex Luthor to Hyperion. And last but not least is Shape. Now, when it comes to Shape, Think of Blob from the X-Men, where he is technically very durable. He can take almost any kind of hit he wants. Matter of fact, he took a punch from Hyperion, which is something most characters, really almost all other characters, cannot do. Either way, when it comes to Shape, Emil, and Arcania, the general says because these three characters have not been exposed to the public, or really the public has not been exposed to them, they'll be great for the Black Ops team. And so he says those three characters, Black Ops, let's move on. Now, the next character we are going to focus on is Edith. Now, when it comes to Edith, she is a new character to us technically, but at the same time, we actually saw her back at the very end of Supreme Power. And what I mean by that is, when it came to Edith, we saw a bunch of different characters after George Bush had announced to the world that if you're going to have powers in America, you're going to work for the American government, for the American military. And so while he was giving that speech, we saw a set of different characters over like 3 or 4 pages. And by this point in our coverage, we've seen most of those people we saw at the very end of Supreme Power, like Arcania, Shape, and Emil. But Edith, she was one of the characters we saw at the very end of Supreme Power who was very worried about the idea of she has powers and now she has to be forced to work for the American government and military. This is going to begin our chance to actually learn about the character more. But here's the thing. When it comes to when it comes to Edith, she has super strength. Now, the question is, though, how strong is she actually? Is she strong as Hyperion? Is she strong as Zarda? We honestly do not know. But we do know that something happened in the past that makes her get angry very easily. And so anytime someone does her wrong, she wants to beat down on that person. But the question is, what happened to her in the past? But we do learn that she does have super strength. Now, the next character is Nighthawk, and this is literally 1 page because right now what you have the government trying to do is put together a team of superheroes, heroes with powers. They don't want anybody who don't have powers at all. And so when it comes to Nighthawk, you have the general remind us that Nighthawk is just Batman. He has no powers. His parents were killed off by some racist person, and so now he kills off people who attack the black community. And that's really it. And he's in Chicago. That's literally it for Nighthawk. And so you have the general say, there's no reason for us to go out of our way to recruit this character into our fold. Now, the last 3 characters we have to talk about is Thomas Thompson, where apparently his code name for right now, because the nerds gave him that name, is Tom Thumb, and he's technically just the Ant-Man on the team. Then you have Nuke, and of course his name should give it away when it comes to his powers. It's just that he's able to release a high amount of radiation, and he does have super strength and flight ability as well. And then the last one is Zarda. Now remember, Zarda is technically the Wonder Woman of this team. Either way right now, we don't know much about her because remember, when we did learn her origin, we found out that her origin is actually not correct. But the question is right now, what is her true origin story? But either way, when it comes to Zarda as well, she killed someone and she took that person's identity. And so right now, the general is having a hard time believing that Zarda is who she's saying she is. Either way, because all 3 characters are kind of new, they all got pushed on the Black Ops team as well. Now, that is your Squadron Supreme team. All those different characters, but right now on 2 different teams. Except that idea goes right out the window. And the reason why, because of Hyperion. Now remember, Hyperion also went into the future and he met his future self. And his future self gave him a plan like, hey, if you want to make sure this earth gets better, you have to take control, complete control. And so his future self gave him an idea to how to actually pull that game plan off. And so right now you have Hyperion going over to the reporter known as Jason Scott. Now remember, Jason Scott was the person who told the world about Hyperion being an alien. Now, it wasn't Hyperion who told him that story. It was the military who told Jason to write that story because the military was trying to hurt Hyperion emotionally. Now, with that being said, this right now is Hyperion getting back towards the military by coming to Jason and telling Jason, I have a story for you. And the story I have for you is what the American military is trying to do. They're trying to form two different teams, one for the public to see and one being a Black Ops team that would take care of different problems that America has across the world. And so this is Hyperion hoping that Jason will write the story and tell the public, which he actually will do. But the reason why Hyperion is doing that is kind of like the first step in his plan to take over the world, to have complete control over the world. But as soon as Jason writes that story and it gets out to the public, you have the general say, okay, there goes my plan of two different teams, because now the world knows about what we were going to do. And so with that story being out there, now when it comes to the general and the government and the military, they have to play a tad bit of cover up, because now with that story being public, America's enemies now know, okay, America now has a group of super beings that they were actually going to use against us. That right there is a huge problem. And so you have George Bush do another press conference. Now, when it comes to this press conference, this is really him telling the world, okay, there's not going to be two teams at all. Matter of fact, it's going to be only one team. And so the general changed his mind and grabbed all the different characters that he was trying to put on different teams and put them on one team. And you have George Bush say, this is your Squadron Supreme. And so getting into the second chapter of the book, this really begins the process of us kind of learning about the idea that there are other people out there who were also infected by the virus that came from Hyperion's ship. Because remember, when it comes to most of the other characters besides Hyperion, where they got their powers came from the virus that had left the ship of Hyperion. And so now we're going to see that that virus did not just affect the people in North America. Because if you follow all my videos so far, you will believe, yes, the virus only affected North America. But now we're going to find out that is not actually true. But before we can actually do that, the opening pages of the second chapter is really more of the team doing paperwork. And really, this paperwork is to say, hey, making sure that you are who you say you are. But on top of that, we want to make sure you sign your contracts as well to show that you are stuck with the military, that you're going to work for only the military, and that is it. You are not going to do anything else unless the military tells you to actually do it. And so right now, it's kind of sealing their fates, saying, hey, you're stuck here forever. Until you actually die, you are part of the American military, the American government. But by day 4 of them now working for the American military, well, that is the moment you do have Alexander, the general, actually call in everybody for their first mission. Now, when it comes to their first mission, they have to go to Africa because apparently there is this leader, John Putu, who's apparently a leader of a certain area in Africa who's using his powers for evil. And he's causing a lot of problems for America and other countries around the world who are also part of the United Nations. And so right now, the UN wants to send in the Squadron Supreme to handle this particular problem. And matter of fact, they have been cleared by the UN to go out to Africa or this area in Africa to take down this certain kind of leader. Now, when it comes to John Putu, apparently he does have a crazy set of powers, which honestly makes him a very good threat right here. Because when it comes to his powers, yes, he's very durable. He's able to take a lot of different things. But you also have Alexander tell us when it comes to John Putu, apparently he's also very smart. But on top of that, he's able to control your mind by talking to you. So technically means that as long as he's nearby you, he could talk into your ears and he finds a way to actually control you. And so those are his 3 powers that he actually has, which does make him a very powerful threat. But either way, you do have Alexander tell the Squadron Supreme, okay, you got your mission. Now it's time for you guys to go to Africa or that area in Africa and take down this particular person. And so before they're able to actually go on their next mission, well, that is the moment you do have Alexander actually pull Zarda to the side. Now, the reason why he does this, because Alexander realized that something is up with Zarda, which honestly there is. Because let's not forget, guys, she did kill someone off at the very end of Supreme Power, and she took that person's secret identity. Not secret, but their identity. She had been pretending to be that person for a certain time period. And so right now, when it comes to Alexander, he's starting to realize that Zarda is not who she says she is. That yes, she may say that she's so-and-so's name, but she's not really that person. Now, you do have Alexander kind of use a way to figure out who she actually is by asking her for a code name, because everybody else on the team has a code name except her. And so what he actually does is says, hey, so we and my friends have been sitting down trying to figure out what to call you when you are out in the field. How do you like Power Princess or Princess Power? And of course, she hates both names. And so she says, just call me Zarda. Now, with that being said, that is technically her real name, Zarda, for the time being, until we actually learn her true origin. But either way, it's her saying, yes, you may call me Zarda, and that is it. And so with her telling the general that, he does get an idea that, okay, so I don't believe that she is who she says she is, the person's name that she's using right now when she's out in the public. I think her real name is Zarda. And then I'm going to do my research with that name to learn more about her. Now, when it comes to their first mission, they actually do get there to Africa. They do get to the location they have to be at to find their target. But when they actually get to their location in Africa, well, that is the moment we come to find out that the leader of the team when they're in the field is actually not Hyperion, it's Dr. Spectrum. Now, this makes sense because when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, he is the only person on the entire team that does have some military background. Not some, a lot. And so it would make sense for him to be the leader of this team on this military mission, except Hyperion. And so with that being said, when they do arrive, you do have the characters begin the process of doing what they were assigned to do to make sure that this mission actually comes out great and not a complete disaster. Now, here comes the problem though, because while you have the heroes out there actually doing their job and taking down the different targets they need to take down so they can get to their main target, you have Blur talk to Hyperion about how he feels. And really, he does this for only 1 page, but honestly, it's very, very important because it does 2 things. And what Blur really wants to talk about to Hyperion, why he's so upset, is because he hates the idea of seeing people fight against one another for no actual good reason. And what he says is that when it comes to the different tribes in Africa, he sees the tribes. He does see where they're different when it comes to their ideas and their beliefs. But at the same time, how do you know who belongs to who? Because they're both black. Both tribes are black. Now, when it comes to Hyperion, he says, well, yeah, look at Europe. A lot of countries out there are dominant Europeans who are Caucasian, very light-skinned white color. And so with that, when those countries fight against each other as well, you have no idea who belongs to who when it comes to a regular person. But the reason why you have these tribes, these countries fighting against one another is because of beliefs, religion, or just because of what you believe life should actually be about. And when those opinions get involved in your conversation with someone, sometimes those conversations can turn really bad and lead to a fight. And so when it comes to these tribes, these countries, or just people alone, that's the reason why you have so much fighting in the world, because we cannot accept the idea of someone else's opinion. But getting back over to the mission, this is where things begin to fall apart for our heroes. And what I mean by that is you do have Dr. Spectrum say, okay, it's time for us to go ahead and take down our target, Batu. I'm going to go find him and take him down. Now, while he flies over there to take down Batu, well, the problem is, though, he realized he has not heard from his girlfriend, Amphibian. And so he begins to worry about her. And so when he flies over to their target, Batu, well, he finds Hyperion and Amphibian standing right next to Batu, where it seems like they now work for him, which honestly they do. And the reason why, because remember, he has mind control abilities. And so he was able to take over the minds of Hyperion and Amphibian as well. Now, because Dr. Spectrum had walked into that room, and because he's a tad bit too slow, just like that, bam, Batu was able to control Dr. Spectrum as well. And he tells all three characters, okay, here's your assignment. Go after your friends and take them out now. And really, with Hyperion by himself, that's a big threat. But when you throw in Dr. Spectrum, that's a huge threat. Now, Amphibian, she's also a threat, but not as big as Hyperion and Dr. Spectrum. But either way, now our three heroes are going to fight against their own team because Batu now controls them. And so when it comes to the third chapter of this book, it's really more just the Squadron Supreme fighting against each other, because we have Dr. Spectrum, Hyperion, and Amphibian right now working for Batu, while you have the rest of the Squadron team trying to fight against him, which honestly is not an easy task, because like I said earlier, when it came to Hyperion, that right there alone is a powerful threat. But when it comes to Dr. Spectrum, my gosh, that threat right there is literally red alert, probably higher than red alert. And so right now you do have the other members of the Squadron Supreme trying their best to actually take down Hyperion, but to also take down Dr. Spectrum. Now, those two characters right there, they do cause a lot of problems. Now, Zarda is actually able to help Dr. Spectrum, but to also help Hyperion. And what she actually does is she goes to Dr. Spectrum first. And the reason why, because Dr. Spectrum powers comes from the crystal that is embedded in his hand. Because remember, when it came to his powers, it comes from his crystal, but that crystal came from Hyperion's spaceship. But on top of that, the crystal has a mind of its own. And so when it comes to Dr. Spectrum's body, there's two different personalities, the crystal, but also Joseph Ledger. But when it comes to the crystal, it does hold Hyperion's mission. Why was he brought here to Earth? But also the crystal knows the true origin of Zarda as well, except we still have no idea what her origin actually is. But you have Zarda go over to Dr. Spectrum and really to the crystal and say, hey, I need you to take over your host, to bring him back to us, because right now he's not in control. But once you do that, I need you to go and handle Hyperion as well. And so you do have the crystal take over Joseph Ledger's body, which means Dr. Spectrum is somewhat back under control. But then you have Dr. Spectrum go use his powers on Hyperion to bring Hyperion back under control. Now, when it comes to Amphibian, it was done a tad bit differently, because what happened was Emil, the smartest person on the team, he found a way to actually take down every single person on the team, kind of how like Batman does in Battle of Tower of Babel. I almost said Battle of Tower of Babel. But in that storyline, Batman figured out a way to take out each member of the Justice League. And so when it comes to Emil, he found a way to take out every single member of the Squadron Supreme. And Amphibian was the easiest one to figure out. And so he does take her out a tad bit, but not really a tad bit. I mean, what he does to her could possibly kill her, but she is saved by the rest of the Squadron Supreme. But because Emil technically did hurt Amphibian, it does tick off Dr. Spectrum. And so he wants to kill off Emil, but now realizing that she was also under Batu control like he was as well with Hyperion. And so right when you have Dr. Spectrum getting ready to kill off Emil, well, that is the moment you have Blur reappear, because he was in the first part of the battle, but not the second part. And the reason why? Because he found some friends. And really, we should not call them friends, but they're here to help the squadron team take out Batu. Now, when it comes to Blur friends, a matter of fact, they're not really friends, but on top of that, we have no idea what their names actually are. But when it comes to Blur and his friends, it actually does continue the idea that when it came to Hyperion spaceship, when he crashed here on Earth, that virus did not just affect the people in North America or just in America, it affected people around the world. Now, at first, with Batu, it seemed like he was the only person in Africa, in the entire continent, who may have powers, but we come to find out that is not true, because these characters right here who are right now standing next to Blur, they also have powers as well. Now, here's the thing. They are very upset with the Squadron Supreme because they're kind of like, look around. Look at what you actually did. Supposedly, you came here to help us because the UN told you to go out here, help us because we were unable to actually take him down. But here comes the problem though. Y'all made things even worse. Look around the area. You guys have caused so much damage in this area. How can we actually sit here right now and say, oh yeah, you guys did a good job helping out? No. You guys ran in head first with no actual plan. Your minds got taken over. You fought against yourselves, and this area took a lot more damage than you guys actually expected. But of course, it happened because you were not truly prepared. But at the same time, Africa, or this area in Africa, did not ask for your help. It was America trying to be America. But here's the catch though. This is actually America's fault. The reason why Batu is in charge because America helped him get in charge. And on top of that, America gave Batu all the weapons he needed to actually take over this area. Because when it comes to America and other countries around the world, when they begin to kind of mess with these small countries and their small wars and give those small countries a bunch of weapons, they actually make a profit out of those wars between those small countries around the world. And so right now, it's this guy saying, just leave. Because honestly, we have the powers to actually take care of him. We were just waiting for the right time. And so we do see 2 of the 5 people that came with Blur go and find Batu, and they literally rip him apart. He's dead just like that. But it proves that right now there's other people out there with powers as well, not just in America, but all over Africa, possibly Asia, also Europe. We don't know yet. And really the story ends there because you do have our heroes go back to America because one, they had no choice, but because they got defeated. They feel defeated because they were defeated. And they realize that this is not a proper team, that this is a team that needs more proper training. This is a team that needs to trust one another. This team needs more control. And that right there is a huge thing to say because right now it's Hyperion realizing, okay, I had a full team of heroes and we were easily stopped by one guy who had powers. One guy. There was like 6, 7 of us and we still failed. That right there is a problem. And so this And so getting into today's storyline, we actually do pick up right now with the Squadron Supreme attacking some random country. Now, the name does not matter. And the reason why, because right now the story is trying to show us what the American military or the American government is using our heroes for. And right now it is to attack other countries around the world. That is why this team was put together. Yes, to keep an eye out on power beings, but at the same time, let's use those power beings as a way to attack other countries. Now, at the same time, this is the American government saying we're trying to handle problems in those countries. And so, for example, if a country right now has infighting, then the American government is going to send in the Squadron Supreme to deal with those problems in that country. And so it kind of gives America a reason to send over the Squadron Supreme. But at the same time, they're sending our heroes over there to just attack those countries and really just dismantle their military weapons to make that country weak. And so right now, we're seeing our heroes right now just attacking people left and right and destroying things in their path. Now remember, not every single character on this team right now has an active power, meaning that when they use their powers, something big really happens, like super strength or super speed, or even the ability to be very durable. Because you have characters like Emil Burbank. And remember, when it comes to Emil, his power is just him being really smart. And so when everybody else got a different kind of power, all he got was brain power. But that is still a very dangerous thing. And matter of fact, he was brought onto this mission as a way to attack this particular country. Because with him being so smart, he's able to create weapons or devices to take down their enemies left and right. And that's how smart he is. He does not have to actually fight. All he has to do is use his brain to create different things to take down people left and right. Now, when it comes to Emil Burbank, he is technically the Lex Luthor of this universe. Because remember, these characters represent DC characters. And so when it comes to Emil, he literally has to be Lex Luthor. The Lex Luthor for Hyperion. And that story right there is gonna come down the road. But either way, we do see our heroes, quotation mark, take down this country completely apart. And so then we see our heroes actually go back to a military base nearby. And of course, this is for them to relax. Now, when they get there, it does lead into a very powerful conversation between Blur, Hyperion, and also Emil. Now, when it comes to this conversation, like I said, it is very important. And the reason why, because it starts with Blur. You have Blur express himself because right now he's very upset with the idea that they are a superhero team that works for the American government and they're sent on different missions as a way to help protect America. But in reality, it's just the government trying to deal with their own problems that they had created in these other countries, or to hopefully stop future enemies. And when it comes to Blur, he feels like they don't have the right to do that, especially when it's countries who are having problems but do not want America's help. Why does America feel like they have the right to deal with those problems for those countries? Now, you do have Emil step in. Now, remember, Emil is supposed to be the smartest person in the entire world. And honestly, he feels like he has all the answers. And so right now, you have Emil tell Blur, listen, you have to realize if we ignore these problems, if we ignore these things, then we have future problems down the road. And so why in the world would we let that happen when we have the ability to actually stop it right now? Now, when it comes to Hyperion, here's his angle. He feels like he's agreeing with Blur, but he's also agreeing with Emil as well. Because when it comes to Hyperion, he also hates the idea that they're being used right now to take down other enemies, to deal with other country problems. But at the same time, he hates the idea that doing all this work for just one particular country. Like America does not have their own problems as well. And so right now, it's Hyperion saying, well, why not just go ahead and control the world? Now, this right here is coming from the Hyperion miniseries that we covered, because we learn in the future, Hyperion does become the ruler of the world. He wants to control it all to make the earth better. And so right now, this is him thinking that. He's thinking that, hey, you know what? Blur is right. We have no right to technically work for one particular country. So why not try to take over the world completely? World domination. Now for Blur, he's looking at Hyperion like, no, dude, that is not what I meant at all. But for Emil, he then questions Hyperion because he says, here's the thing though. What do you do after you're able to control everything? What can you do after you rule over the entire world? Where's the fun in that? And that is where the conversation actually ends, because now Hyperion has to think about, maybe Emil is right. If I do control the world, then what's next? What else could I do? And the conversation ends there. And so you do have Emil actually as Edith. Now remember, Edith is the character that we are going to focus on today and try to learn her origin story. But you do have Emil ask her, hey, how do you feel about world domination, taking over the world? How do you feel? And honestly, she does not even care. She walks outside to talk to the moon, something she always do, because apparently she has no one to actually talk to. Now, you do have Blur go out there and try to see that she is okay. Now, of course, she tells Blur to go away because the only person that she wants to talk to is the moon. Now, the way she says it is kind of like she's angry at Blur. And you do have Blur walk away because it was just Blur trying to check up on her to make sure that she was okay. And so you have her realize that what she said to Blur, or how she said to Blur, was incorrect, that it was wrong. And so she does apologize, but she just wants to talk to the moon because the moon is the only thing that can hold on to her secrets. And that is it. And this leads us into the origin of Edith, aka Inertia. And so this leads into the origin of Edith, or Inertia. And what I mean by that, we actually do pick out her right now at a young age with her mother. Now, right off the bat, we learn that her mother is someone who cares for her. She loves her daughter very, very much. But when it comes to her father, that is a completely different story. Now, when her dad comes home, we do learn very quickly that her dad is two things. One, really three things. One, he is super Christian. Number two, he's also part of a church. But when it comes to that church, he is a leader of that church. And three, he's very abusive to his daughter and his wife. Now, here's the thing. We learn right off the bat at this age, Edith had her powers. She's very durable. She has super strength. Now, the reason why we know that, because apparently he got word from her school, the school nurse, that they were unable to actually give her a certain kind of shot that she needs to be in that school. And so with that, he gets very angry. Now, the reason why the nurse could not give her that shot, because her skin is already super durable, because at this point, Hyperion spaceship have flew over America. And remember, when it came to Hyperion, when he came here to Earth, his spaceship had some kind of virus that was released over the world. And that is how you have other power beings in the world, thanks to that virus right there. And so when it came to Edith, her powers were activated because she was infected by the virus. And so at this point, her skin is very durable. She has super strength. But here's the thing. When it comes to her father, he believes it's some kind of devil work. And if they're able to wash away her sins, and she tries her best to be more godly-like, then her powers will go away, because her powers are something of the devil. Now, when it comes to Edith's mother, she does try to reason with her father, but unfortunately, he is not listening. And he feels like she's also the reason why Edith's the way she is. And so he does slap his wife as well to show that he's not just verbally abusive, he's also physically abusive as well. And so you have Edith try her best to hide her powers, but to also be more godly-like. And the reason why, because she wants to protect her mother, because she knows if she tries anything else that is technically a sin, her dad is going to abuse her mother. And so right now, she is just trying her best to protect her mother from her dad. She hid her powers. She acted more godly-like. Now, with all that being said, though, while she is walking around school at the age of probably 16, she does get assaulted by a bunch of bullies. And so, of course, you would think that her father would actually care that his daughter was attacked, that his daughter was sexually attacked. She was assaulted, and you would think her father would actually care about that. But he believes that her assault is actually faked, that she's technically pretending that she was assaulted for some kind of attention. Is her father continuing to be verbally abusive to his own daughter? Even though she was just assaulted, this man right here doesn't believe that she was. And if she was assaulted in his eyes, the reason why? Because she is wicked. She is sinful. She works for the devil. Because again, it all ties back into her powers. And then this leads into the death of Inertia's mother. Because while you have Inertia right now just laying in bed and really traumatized because she was assaulted by a group of guys, and you do have her mom trying to take care of her, her dad is not around. And the question is, though, where is her dad? And so you have the mom realize, oh my gosh, my husband has been cheating on me. And so what she actually does is go find out where he is at. And when she does find him, bam, he is cheating on her. When it comes to Inertia's parents, her dad was cheating on her mom. Now, when it comes to her mom, her goal now is to leave, go get her daughter, and just leave completely. She wants to get away from this man. This is a guy who says he's so godly-like. He's a leader of a church. But here's the thing, he's abusive and he also is a cheater. And so she does try to leave. Now, when she does try to leave, he tries to stop her by grabbing the wheel of the car. And when he does grab it and she tries to drive off, of course, the wheels turn too far and she goes over a cliff and she dies in the car. And so now this man had just killed his wife. Inertia's mother is now dead. And this is going to lead to her getting her revenge. And so when we jump into the next chapter, it continues her origin and learn what happened to her father and what she did after she found out her mom had died. But getting back to the present day in the second chapter, we actually do pick up with our heroes right now attacking another area in this country that they're in right now. Now, this time things get a tad bit more extreme because that is the moment you have our heroes doing the same thing they did in the other parts of this country, just destroying everything in their past. Now, here's the problem though. You have Zarda actually kill off a wave of soldiers that belong to this country. Now, when she did that, Blur was shocked because at first they weren't killing anyone. They were just beating up people, destroying weapons, and that is it. But here they are now, and Zarda just killed somebody. And so right now, you have Blur just freaking out. He's wondering why in the world would she do that for? Why did she kill those soldiers? Now, that is the moment you have Emil once again show off his knowledge of the world. Because what he says right now that these soldiers may have tried to protect their hometown and say that they're here to make sure their hometown is never attacked ever again by different parts of this country. But at the same time, these soldiers were doing horrible things in this town as well. Now for Blur, he does not believe Emil at all because what Emil is saying, yes, these soldiers are protecting their town from their cruel country, but at the same time, the soldiers of this town was also doing horrible things. And you have Hyperion actually confirm that by saying there is actually a pile of bodies underneath the ground right now where Blur and Hyperion are actually standing on. And so right now it's Hyperion saying, Blur, you may feel like what we're doing here right now is wrong, but in reality, we're not. Because these soldiers were not really protecting their town. They were just trying to hide the fact that they were also bad people in this town. It's just that they didn't want their town to belong to a more worst leader, the leader of this country. And so it's Hyperion trying to teach Blur a lesson about the real world. But then we get back into the origin of Inertia. Now, when we do, it's actually still in the present day. And what I mean by that is, while you still have the heroes right now attacking this particular area of this country, trying to find more soldiers to kill, well, that is the moment you actually have Inertia find a young girl hiding in a house. And right now, this young girl is just scared to death. She does not want to move. And on top of that, she does not understand the language that Inertia is trying to speak to her because she does not speak English. Now, you do have Emil walk in, and just like Emil, because he is the smartest person in the world, he knows how to speak a lot of different languages, including the one right here in this country. And so he's able to actually communicate with her, to talk to her. Now, when he does talk to her, this is where we learn more about this small girl. And we kind of find out that her mother and sisters were technically raped by the soldiers. Now, you would think that the father of this family would come in and try to get revenge for his wife and his daughters by being raped by these soldiers. But the thing is, he felt like they had also sinned, because when it came to their religion, it is a sin in some kind of way to be raped by men. And so the father actually killed off his own wife and his daughters just because they got raped. That is how bad this story gets. And so then you have Inertia get angry like no other because she knows how it feels to get attacked, to get assaulted. And when you wanted help, when you wanted your dad in your corner, your dad is not in your corner, except in this country, their dad killed them off. This is how bad the story truly gets. And then we dive back into the origin of Inertia. And so when we jump back in the past, we do kind of find out that when it comes to Inertia, or young Inertia, Edith, right now, she's still in her house. Now, while she's in her house right now, she does look at the moon. And this is where we kind of find out why the moon is so special. And the reason why, because her mom and her would always look at the moon together and talk to the moon together. But on top of that, her mom always said, if you ever look at the moon, you can always feel me smiling down at you. Meaning that if I die, just know I will always be with you. Just look at the moon and I will look down at you smiling. And so when it came to Edith, when she looked at the moon, she kind of realized that her mom had died. It's kind of like some weird connection, just knowing that the moon is telling her your mom has died. And now she's up here with me, looking down at you, smiling. But of course, for Edith, she knows something bad must have happened to her mother. And so this is the moment where we actually do see her right now break out of her house, and she's going to find her father. And matter of fact, we do jump over to her father. And when she does find her father's right now trying to get some money that he has stashed away at the church as a way to get away, because he now knows that he'll be arrested for murder. It's the reason why his wife died, because of him. And his little ex-girlfriend, I say ex-girlfriend because definitely she will no longer date a guy who is a murderer. But either way, his ex-girlfriend called the police and told them, hey, this man just killed his wife, because he was afraid of his secret getting out. And so right now, he's at the church trying to get some money and get away. But unfortunately, he's caught by his daughter, Edith. Now, I say unfortunately, I really mean fortunately, because you do have Edith say, no, I'm tired of you being abusive. You killed my mother. You always abused me and her. It's time for you to go. And so this is the moment where you actually have Edith kill off her father. She technically takes a cross, stabs him, and keeps him stuck to a wall. And so when the cops find him, they're like, oh, we found him. We found our killer, but who killed him? And it doesn't even stop there, because then you actually have her go after the boys from earlier who had technically assaulted her. And so now it's her getting back on them because what they did to her is also wrong. And so we actually watch her go ahead and technically beat down on the boys. Now, I'm pretty sure she killed them, but at the same time, we have no idea. But she did get the payback that she always wanted. And so getting back into the present day for Inertia, this is where she realized that she has so much in common with this little girl. And so what she says to herself, I'm going to help the young girl get payback for what was done to her family. And so what you have Inertia actually do is find the soldiers that had raped her mom, had raped her sisters, and of course got them killed by their father. She found all of them and she stuck them in the ground. Now they're still alive. Thing is, only their heads are at the surface right now. And the reason why, so the young girl can get some very sharp and cut their heads off, killing each one of them one by one for killing off her sisters and her mother, leaving her on her own. And so you had a little girl just cut each head off, bam, 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 just like that, to get revenge. Inertia knows how it feels to lose someone who actually cared for you because the men of this world is just so cruel. And so then we jump over to China. Now, when we jump over to China, this is going to be very, very important. And the reason why? Because right now you have the leader of China right now telling us and telling a mysterious character that he knows what America is trying to do. And what he's saying right now is he knows what the American government is doing right now, which is sending heroes as soldiers to attack other countries around the world, to take care of their enemies around the world. And sooner or later, America is going to attack China, because even though China and America are technically on good terms, America and China want to take out each other for a whole lot of different reasons. And so he knows that sooner or later, America is not going to stop. Sooner or later, they're going to go after China, go after Russia, go after different powerhouses around the world. And so right now, it is the leader of China saying, and that is why I'm going to put together my own superhero team, starting with you. And that is the moment we come to find out that he is right now recruiting Michael Redstone. And remember, Michael Redstone has the same powers as Hyperion, but on top of that, he was the first bad guy of the entire universe. But even on top of that, right now, Michael Redstone is going to lead a group of characters who also have powers, but they work for the China's government. And that right there is going to lead into technically a huge world war. And so getting into today's storyline, we actually do pick up right now with the general meeting up with the Squadron Supreme team. Now, when he does, this is him right now telling the team that they deserve a break because they have accomplished a lot of different missions. And on top of that, most of those missions were actually successful. And so the government and the military feels like they deserve a break from one another. Now, this is actually very important because it also shows that when it comes to this team, they're kind of forced to work for the American government because thanks to George Bush law, where he says that if you have any kind of powers, you are forced to work for the military. But on top of that, this team is not very trustworthy to one another. In some cases, you do have some characters like each other, but in other cases, you do have characters hate each other. Either way right now, you do have the characters going their separate ways. Now, you actually do have the general tell Hyperion that he has to do some kind of meeting with the public. Of course, go outside and talk to, some fans of yours because they really do love you and they want to meet you. But then he stops Emil Burbank. Now, this is actually very important. And the reason why, because remember, Emil Burbank is actually the smartest person on the team. Because when it came to Hyperion coming to Earth, let's not forget, there was a virus on his spaceship. And with that virus going airborne, it did give select people powers. But when it came to Emil, he did not get an active power. When I say an active power, I mean more of like they're able to actually do something very active with their power. So like, for example, Shape, he's very durable. If someone tries to hit him, well, of course, they're going to fail. Or another example, when it comes to Blur, he has super speed. When he runs really fast. But when it comes to Emil, he's just super smart. When it came to the virus, it made him the smartest person on the world. And so this is the general wanting to talk to him about something very important. And we kind of find out that this meeting is all about what Emil did on the first mission of the Squadron Supreme. Because let's not forget, right after George Bush made that law saying that if you have powers, you have to work for the American government, the military was so fast to send their team of heroes over to another country. But when they did, they were going to chase down someone who also had powers. Here comes the big problem though. That person had the ability to control people. And so he made the Squadron Supreme fight against one another. Now, Emil was able to take down Amphibian before she was able to actually take him down, because he is the smartest person in the world, that he has plans to take down every single person on the team in his brain. And so when it came to Amphibian, she was the easiest, but he did state, I do have other ways to take down other members of this team. And so right now, when it comes to this meeting between the General, Emil, and our mysterious third person, they're telling him, we want you to actually find a way to take down Hyperion, because he's the only person on the world where we cannot actually find a weakness for. And that makes sense, because look at Superman. Superman has kryptonite, but when it comes to Hyperion, he literally has no weakness at all. A nuke might hurt him, but it's not going to take him down, meaning that you will have to use so many different kinds of nukes as a way to actually take him down. But that, again, is just a maybe. And so right now, it's the American military say, we want you to help us find a way to take down every single person on the team, but especially Hyperion, because he is the strongest. But then we jump over to Blur. Now, we do see Blur right now visiting his mother. Now, this is actually very important. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to Blur and his mom, they have a very close relationship. But on top of that, she was a single mother. And so when his powers came into effect and he had the ability to use his powers as a way to make money, he gave most of that money over to his mother. Because again, his mother was a single mother, but always there for her son. And so right now is him coming home to make sure that she's okay. Because as soon as George Bush made that law, he had to leave and go work for the American military. He had no choice. And so when he comes home, she tells him that, of course, she does miss him. But on top of that, his agents he had before he had joined the American military has still been calling her, hoping to get a hold of her son, Blur. Because let's not forget, as soon as he got his powers and was able to use his powers, he found a way to make some money. And that way was going around promoting different kinds of companies on his jacket, pants, or whatever. And of course, he got paid for it. And so right now you have his agents still trying to get a hold of him, but unfortunately, he had joined the military. Now, he does tell his mom he'll be right back, but he has to go see one particular friend. And so we come to find out that Blur is going to have a meeting with Nighthawk. Now remember, Nighthawk is technically Batman of this universe. And matter of fact, their origins are very similar to one another. The big difference is that even though both their parents were killed right in front of them, when it comes to Nighthawk, well, his parents were killed off because they were black. They were killed off by a racist white person. And so when he became a hero, he did stay in Chicago, but he only protects the black community. That is it. And so if you're a white person right now in trouble, he is most likely not going to help you at all. Now, on top of that, if you're a black person that is hurting the black community, he'll make sure to hurt you. Like, for example, right now, before Blur is able to meet up with Nighthawk, we see Nighthawk right now being a hero in Chicago. And with him being a hero, he's going after a black pimp. And of course, when it comes to a pimp, he is forcing women to do sex work. And so right now, for Nighthawk, he's very upset by that, with the idea that there is a black man trying to hurt his own people, black women especially. And so you have Nighthawk break the legs on this guy and then set the house on fire. Yeah, another thing too, when it comes to Nighthawk, you're most likely going to die. Where Batman, you may live, but you're going to have some broken bones. When it comes to Nighthawk, you're not going to live. You're going to die. And so you have Nighthawk break this guy's legs and then set the house on fire and then tell the guy, if you want to live, you better crawl out of this house right now before you burn with the house. And then he leaves. Because again, this black man was hurting the black community, is what Nighthawk says he's going to protect. And so that is the moment where we actually jump over to the meeting between Nighthawk and Blur. Now, this meeting is actually very important. And the reason why, because right now you have Blur asking Nighthawk to actually join the Squadron Supreme. Now, the reason why Blur is doing this, because let's not forget, Nighthawk is not part of the team at all. And the reason why, because he has no powers. When George Bush made that law saying if you have powers, you have to work for the American military or the government, well, that left off Nighthawk because he has no powers. He was put on the sideline. But this is Blur saying, I need you to join the team no matter what, because this team, this whole operation, it has to be shut down. But I feel like you're the man who will be able to actually shut everything down, working from the inside out. Because what Blur is saying that right now, he's very bothered about the idea of going to different countries and technically attacking those countries because there are problems for America in some kind of way. But the thing is, America is the reason why we have these problems with other countries. It's not those countries' fault, it's America's fault. And so right now, it's Blur saying this whole entire operation, it has to be shut down. It has to be stopped. And I feel like you're the man who'll be able to actually shut everything down by working from the inside out. Now, after that, you have Nighthawk ask about Hyperion, because Hyperion should be in charge of the team. But you have Blur say Hyperion is not Hyperion or how he was in the past. He is completely different. When he's out there in the battlefield, he is just taking orders left and right, like some kind of dog. Like right now, he's cold. He's heartless. He's no longer the man we thought he was a year ago or 2 years ago. He is now a completely different man. And so it's now Blur saying, I need you for that reason, because this team is going to cause more problems for the Earth. But unfortunately, you have Nighthawk say no, because he wants to stay here in Chicago and protect the black community. Now, things are about to get a whole lot worse, because while you have Hyperion right now meeting up with some fans, like the general asked him to do earlier in the storyline, well, while he's doing that, that is the moment he does hear a voice. Now, as soon as he hears that voice, he remembers who that person was. And when he hears that voice, it scares him a whole lot. Because when he turns around, it's Michael Redstone. And let's not forget, Michael Redstone was the first villain of this entire universe. And so right now, it's Hyperion realizing that he has to fight against Michael Redstone. And that is a problem, because when it comes to Michael Redstone, he does have a lot of powers that Hyperion has, just he cannot fly. Either way, he's still a very powerful threat, and now him and Hyperion are about to fight. And so getting into the second chapter, we actually do pick up right now with Hyperion fighting against Redstone. And while they're fighting against one another, of course, right now it's being shown on live television. Because let's not forget, Hyperion was just out there meeting the fans. And of course, it was being done on cameras. And so right now, this fight is being shown on live television, which is a great thing because you do have the general realize what's happening right now because he was watching the actual event. And so you have Zarda also watching as well. She freaks out because she's in love with Hyperion. And so she flies out to go save her man. But the question is, though, will she make it in time to actually save her man? But getting back over to the battle between Hyperion and Redstone, we have to remember that Redstone has the same abilities as Hyperion, except he cannot fly. But it still makes him a great opponent for Hyperion to go toe-to-toe with. But on top of that, we have to remember that when it came to Redstone, he was the first true bad guy for our heroes. Like literally, this was the first super being they had to fight against who was actually bad, who's going around Chicago doing a lot of horrible things. And so with that being said, when it comes to Redstone, he is a problem. He's just a mini Hyperion, but still able to take out Hyperion. Now remember, he got his powers like the other characters did. Because remember, when it came to Hyperion's spaceship, when it came to Earth, it did release some kind of airborne virus. And with that virus, it did give people the ability to do different things. And when it came to Redstone, he just got similar powers to Hyperion, making him a great opponent for Hyperion. But with that being said, though, you have Hyperion realize he has to stop Redstone. Because right now, you have Redstone just killing off innocent people left and right, burning them alive, snapping their necks. The list goes on and on and on. The question is, though, can Hyperion actually stop him? That's the big question right now. And so you do have Hyperion trying his best, but unfortunately, innocent people are dying left and right. Now, you do have Hyperion say, you know what? Let me go ahead and take this man to space, because if I do that, most likely he'll suffocate. But here's the thing. Redstone says, oh, by the way, I have a nuke down in that city. And by the way, it's going to go off very soon. And so if you want to actually stop that nuke, you're going to have to let me live, because I'm the only person who knows where that nuke is actually at. And so unfortunately, Hyperion has to take him back down to Earth to hopefully stop him and find that nuke in time, because if he doesn't, a lot of more innocent people are going to die. Now, like I said earlier, though, this fight was being broadcast on live television. And so with that being said, you also had Nighthawk and Blur watching TV. And so as soon as Blur and Nighthawk see what's happening right now, you have Blur leave just like that. He knows Hyperion needs help, because Redstone is a great opponent that could actually take out Hyperion if he actually wants to. And so this battle just got more intense by the moment. Now, we do get back over to the battle between Hyperion and Michael Redstone. And when we do, we have Redstone just beating down on Hyperion. He's also playing dirty, to the point where he does temporarily blind Hyperion by using his heat vision on Hyperion. And so right now, it's Redstone getting the ability to kill off more innocent people as a way to get to Hyperion. Now, this is where things get a tad bit crazy, because then you have Zarda appear. And when she does appear, you have Zarda want to make sure Hyperion's okay. But you also have Hyperion tell Zarda, you need to find the nuke and stop it. Take it away from here, because innocent people are going to die. Now remember, when it comes to Zarda, she does not care about the innocent people. She only cares about Hyperion, that's it. And so right now, when it comes to Zarda, she's like, listen, we'll be okay. We will survive the nuke. But you have Hyperion tell her, no, I need you to take care of that nuke. Please, take that nuke away and save innocent lives. Do it for me. And so you have Zarda actually pick it up, and she flies away with the nuke, and it goes off. And so we're left to believe that Zarda is now technically dead, or she could have survived, but we have no idea. Now, this is where things get a tad bit annoying because this is the ending of the book where you actually have Redstone make fun of the idea that Zarda could technically be dead. But when he turns around, of course, that is the moment he's confronted by Hyperion, Nighthawk, and also Blur. And so we're left to believe that right now, our three heroes are going to defeat Redstone, possibly kill him. We have no idea. And the reason why I say no idea because the next story we do, or technically in the timeline, is Ultimate Power, where you have our heroes here actually fight the heroes of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Yes, you heard that right. It was the Ultimate Power crossover. It was the next storyline, which of course, if you read that book, it doesn't tell us what happened over here when it comes to Redstone. The last thing we see is that Hyperion, Nighthawk, and Blur are about to fight him, and that's it. That is the end of this series.